And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my interview with the legend Christian Francis. Gives me a face. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well on a nice, sunny afternoon here, but 8 in the morning for you.
Oh, it's sunny out. It's sunny
Dedication.
California. um, welcome to the channel. Uh, gosh, I haven't done it. I should have said this before we started. I haven't done an interview since my high school broadcast, so this is going to be interesting.
Well, I've never done an interview about writing before, so
Okay.
it's a new one. I even had to remind myself what my books were about. So
It's all good. It's all good. Anyway, you've seen his books a bunch on the channel lately because I've been going through the Animus Chronicles, all of them. We're gonna at this point. I'm just waiting for the third one. You know,
start that then.
I can't wait. But anyway, let's get a little background on you, Christian.
Sure. Well, I've always done script writing, and I've always been a horror fan, and always done started off doing fan scripts, as virtually anyone who's got any interest in film has probably done at some point.
Yeah.
Never really did any prose. I read it. I mean, I read Stephen King, obviously wearing the t-shirt, but I never really thought myself at a level enough to be able to do that. And it was about, I think, 2012. I became friends with Mark Allen Miller, who is the CEO of Encyclopocalypse, way before then. And I started becoming his co-writer for a lot of things. Like, we did a load of comics together. We did for sort of Boom Studios, heavy metal, things like that. And we did a few short films, like Fun Size Horror is a compendium of short films. We got a film in there. We did a Women in Horror Month video. And it was when he started up Encyclopocalypse that he said that he wanted me to try writing because for some reason he liked my writing. He's obviously probably a bit insane. So I gave it a go. I literally had no idea what I was doing and have no formal training at all, apart from, I say no formal training. I've got a master's in critical and creative writing. So I guess that is formal training. Yeah, but I literally, for writing at least, it was a kind of catharsis of, let's just see what happens. Because I don't know how to write a book. I never knew how to write a book. I know how to write, and screenplays are so easy in comparison. Screenplays is great. You just sit there and go, here's a scene. That's one person says that, one person says that. That's it. Now there's a whole thing of, oh, you have to describe motivation. No, tell us what the scene looks like. And you're like, oh, shit. Can't you expect everyone to know? You go, oh, it's a sawmill. Everyone knows what a sawmill looks like. No, you got to go into every little detail and say what it is. So Mark told me to read Stephen King's On Writing, which is the only Stephen King book I haven't read, which is probably what I should have read, but never read it. And it was basically kind of like using my own, I don't know, imagination to try and figure out a story, how to write, as well as try and create a cohesive story. But the only problem is, I don't think my mind works the same as everyone else's, because if you've read my books and they're not 100% normal. So that is literally how my brain figured out how to write. And it's probably from the screenwriting background and the comic background. It's like every chapter is kind of a scene on its own. And I don't really go for the kind of long con for writing, where it's like, I'm going to build up and nothing's going to happen for 100 pages. And then all of a sudden, I just like to go, things are happening. Here's things. Look over there. There's another thing. Over here, there's another thing. And at the end, they might make sense. They might not, but they might make sense. And hopefully by the end, I've confused everyone enough that they don't realize that there are unanswered questions until they read the next book. And they go, oh, actually, this book doesn't seem to be the same, until you get to the end and go, oh, I get it now. So but yeah, I went from my background to modern day quite quickly. I skipped over almost 46 years of my life. But let's see, what else about my background? I'm English, half Arabic, half Cornish. Grew up in London, Bristol, Paris for a bit,
Okay.
in the south of England, and I live here now. Did move to LA in 2012 to work with Mark. And Mark Miller, Encyclopocalypse guys, for anyone who's just tuned in. And and just basically just lived my best life there for a few years. Met my partner, Vicky, who I now live with in England. And yeah, that's my background. And what I do apart from the writing, I'm a graphic designer normally. And
okay.
So if you've seen most of the covers for Encyclopocalypse books, I'd say about 70% of them are my work. And they're all, if anyone wants to see any of them, they can go on to my Twitter profile, and there's a link at the top to my portfolio. I don't think anyone will necessarily want to see them, but if they do, I also am a singer in a band, have been in a band as well. Also on my portfolio, there's links to the music. Don't know why anyone would even bother, but it's there.
Hey.
And ridiculously, I also run alternative karaoke, which is a rock and heavy metal karaoke at festivals.
Oh, that's fun.
So there's Download Festival here, which is basically like a Lollapalooza kind of thing. And in about 3 weeks, I'll be there running metal karaoke for 5 days.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's tiring. I mean, that's out of everything I do, that's probably the thing I've done the longest. Like graphic design, I've probably done for 20 years. Karaoke, I've probably done for about 25 years. It's not your parents' karaoke. It is rock and metal all the way.
Is that the tagline underneath?
Actually, what is it? Weirdly, the tagline is "You know you want it," and I just realized that how dodgy that sounds now.
Might be time for a change.
Yeah, I think I should. It's one of the things that I've just always had a logo, and it's always been there, and I've never really thought about it until right now in live on YouTube.
That's all good.
Brilliant.
So
my background's a bit messed up.
So let's try talk about your writing process. When you start writing a book, do you always have the same process, or does it change depending on the book? Or
well, it's like depends. If it's like one of my books, is like not a novelization, the process is basically type. Like just type. I heard this thing not too long ago where they said there's 2 kinds of people, where there's people who hear their thoughts and people who don't hear their thoughts. That blew my mind, because I was going, what do you mean people hear their thoughts? That's what? And when people said inner voice, I thought that was like not a thing. I thought that was basically just an expression. I didn't realize that majority of people in this world can actually hear their own thought, like hear their own voice in their head, and they picture whole scenarios, and when they think of things to do, they can actually imagine whole things in their minds, like almost like a waking dream. I don't do that. I haven't got that. I had no idea. So literally, when I write, my brain is clear most of the time. Like I haven't got anything bothering me and like speaking to me. So what I do is literally just sit there, and for Everyday Monsters, my first book, this was the process. I opened Word, I just typed a story and saw where it went. And what happened was, when I got to probably 6,000 words, I then realized, oh wait, this is terrible, but this idea here is what it is. So I ditched the entire first 6,000 words and just started from that one idea. And each time I got to the end of a scene, whether it's within a chapter or an end of a chapter, I literally just write what I think would be a cool, like everything is like, what would I want to read? And it's not overthought, because I think when you start overthinking writing, you end up doubting yourself too much, and you're like kind of hampering the creative process and making everything you're doing kind of generic. Like if you sit there and just go, all right, well, I need a monster for here. Well, and you end up, if you think about it too much, you're going to end up copying everyone else's monsters. Whereas for here, what I did was I literally just sat there and say the opening scenes for, it's not going to ruin it for anyone who hasn't read it, because it's, you'll get to it in page like 5 or 6. The main person is a zombie, and he goes to an interview and somebody rips the other guy's head off.
Yeah.
But it's like, and the guy's still alive who has his head ripped off because he's a zombie too. That was literally, it makes, when you're reading it, you'll probably go, that makes no sense. It didn't make sense to me while I was writing it, until I'll like write the scene and I'll go, wow, that'd be weird if he had his head ripped off. Let's try that. Then I write that and then go, oh, well, let's make that make sense. So there's no actual plan of where it's going while I'm writing it, for Everyday Monsters anyway. By the time I got to the last chapter, which kind of ties it, well, it doesn't tie it up, it just puts a little button on the end that kind of ends a story, maybe. And that was Mark Miller's idea, because he read it and loved it, and his one note was, this needs like an ending that is basically a bit more of a package, and that you wouldn't have to carry it on. So I won't ruin it for anyone. It's not a massive reveal. It's basically just an ending. But for anyone who's read it, if you cut those last pages out of when things return to normal, that wasn't there until the feedback. It literally ended just like, oh, done, don't care. This is it.
That's hard to think about.
But then when it came to Incubus, that was different. That I had to change what I was doing, because I couldn't do a continuation of a story in the same way, because I would end up, I mean, that was 80,000 words. By the time I get to 80,000 words of the next one, I'd be so far divorced from what this story was, I wouldn't know. So it started with one idea, and that idea was the ending. So the ending of Incubus is the first thing I thought about, because as it's a sequel, you have to know where your stories, like how they entwine. And Incubus, basically, you can read as a separate book, and it literally has nothing to do with the first one.
Yeah.
Until you get to the very end and you realize, and it tells you the link. And the link is, then it makes you realize it is all part of the same story. A batshit story, sure, but it's still part of it. Then when I got to the sacrifice of Anton Stacy, which you didn't like, but that's good. I'm fine.
I like the characters. I thought it was a really good character study.
That was a script. That was a script I wrote, and was actually the first ever Animus story. And basically what it is that is a teaser to a greater story. And the greater story, I mean, doesn't really matter if I tell people one part of it. There's basically like a rot that is going through all of America, basically, destroying and eating every living thing and anything. It's basically consuming everything. That is actually directly related to Everyday Monsters and Incubus as a concept of the spreading rot. And the next book, which I do plan to write, will actually explain this rot, because when realities change, there's side effects. Like, you can't change reality without a consequence, and there's balances, and my whole belief system with my stories is everything has to have a consequence of some kind. Yes. And if they're not addressed in one book, they'll be addressed in another. Sacrifice of Anton Stacy is a completely divorced story, but just so happens it's like what happened. Imagine if in a story, a bomb goes off in one side of the country, a nuclear bomb, and you're looking at a story and they're slowly getting sick from radiation poisoning, but you don't explain what happened. That's basically what it is. So by the end of the next book, you'll know exactly what that rot was, and you'll realize they just don't know what it was. They didn't know, they have no experience, and they don't know the whole story of what this rot is, because they're like ants playing in a human's living room. They don't know the concept of what's around them. They're just experiencing it. And the story itself is about rot as well. It's about the rot of the human condition, and how people, like, how families are inherently rotten in a way because you're forced into a unit without any choices. And for most people, it's fine and lovely and amazing. But for others, it's the reason for all the wrong in their life. And that's what the book was. It was like a kind of an exercise in trying to explain a deeper understanding of like the family. So it was about the characters, but it was never supposed to make sense. The book was
Okay.
never supposed to make sense because it was an aside, and it was a book that I wrote and was not planning on publishing. It was like a kind of it was written in between Everyday Monsters and Incubus, and was just, let's see if this could be a sequel. But by the time I got to the end of it, I realized it was not at all. And that's when I realized I had to think of the ending and actually think of a better way of doing a sequel than just picking up with the characters where you left off. Because that is, can you imagine if these were real people? Like if you're real people, like say in any book, they go through absolute hell and back, literally in the cases of my book. And then you're going to do a sequel where you pick up with them again and do another thing, and it has to be bigger. Not people would not be able to survive this.
Yeah. True.
But for writing process for novelizations, now that's a different thing, and a thing that I don't think people understand. Like people think a novelization is based on a film. It's not.
No. I'll interject here. I'm part of a podcast called Paper Movies, and we review movie novelizations. And this month we're doing Rambo 3.
Awesome.
Which happened to be written by David Morrell, wrote a script, which was nothing. It wasn't even in the Middle East. It was in Central America. And then Stallone said no and rewrote it. And they rewrote the thing like 18 times, and they had to release a novelization. And David Morrell's like, can I just use a couple of these drafts? So it has the basic plot structure of Rambo 3, but is so much more in depth. And it's about like Islam and destiny and stuff. It just has different themes than the actual film.
It's wonderful because when you think about like every time somebody reads a script that they haven't seen a film of, they will have a different concept in their head of what it is, not just what it looks like, but what the film means. And you can easily see that like with virtually any novelization that isn't like a pandering novelization. Like what I mean by pandering novelization is one of those big ones, like not any of the Alan Dean Foster stuff, because his stuff is fucking amazing. The stuff, the more like the Catwoman kind of ones, like a generic one where it's literally they've said, here's the film, write this, no deviations, no nothing. You don't get the script, you get the film. You work on the film only. And that's when you read it and you go, there's literally no point me doing this because all I'm doing is describing something that anyone can just turn on the TV and see. Like there's no point of a novelization which is a copy. The films exist, and it's most novelizations now, especially the ones Encyclopocalypse are doing, are because they love the films. So they don't want to, especially me, I don't want to rewrite a film I love. That would be awful. I want novelization, I start with the earliest draft of the script that we can get. And literally, I don't watch the film at all. I don't even watch it again. If I haven't seen it, like Titan Find or Creature, as it's in America, I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Absolutely didn't see it. And I made a concerted effort not to see it because I don't want to, because apart from the fact that you don't license the film, you license the screenplay. So if you're, for instance, this isn't the case, but let's say in A Nightmare on Elm Street original draft, it doesn't mention his striped jumper. And you write a novelization of that and you've licensed the screenplay only, and then you mention the red and black striped jumper, red and green striped jumper. You're literally stealing somebody else's IP because it's not in the original script. So for this, I had to basically just shut off the films and not even think about them and look at the script and then see it through my own eye, because scripts don't make sense as a novel. You can't just write the scripts out and go, that makes sense. There's got to be interlinking scenes. There has to be more character depth because a lot of the actors bring the depth to the script, and that's their job. And without that, you have to do more. So, for instance, Wishmaster was the first novelization I did, and you've got to love Pete Atkins, absolutely wonderful human being, by the way. It's because we knew him, and I had the idea that he should write it because, you know, he wrote the script, but he said, oh, absolutely hell no. He's got no time and no one to do it. And so I begged, because I'm not a proud person. I begged. And he said, yeah, sure. So I was like, oh, don't have to do anything more. Okay, well, let's go for it. So I got the script and I wrote it. I basically just wrote a quick draft. And when I mean quick draft, I mean just went through it, and it was probably about 10,000 words of just the basic story and all the bits from the script as prose. So there wasn't actually any development, any details of the scenes. So then I had to go through afterwards and try and build it out, because that's what you do. And I realized that I had to ask, could I? And I was allowed, but I changed a couple of things to make them make sense, because there was a few, like, you don't realize when you're writing a script, a novel plot hole. And there are plot holes in every single script. You can't get rid of them because of the way they're written. They're without detail. So when you put detail in, problems occur. And that's why a lot of films, they go, how come they didn't realize there was a plot hole? It was in the script. You can't have to. So, like, for instance, I did develop I changed a bit of it. Like the character that Robert England plays in Wishmaster, Beaumont, he's just the rich old collector friend. Mm-hmm. And he was nothing different in the script. The script, basically, the script is the film. There's very, very little difference. And that's a big compliment to Pete Atkins. Like, he wrote such a visual script. And I used a lot of his descriptions word for word. Like, I get credit for writing a novelization, yet some of the descriptions, they go, oh, that's a great turn of phrase. I didn't do that. That was Pete, but I get credit. So I'm fine with that. But with Beaumont, I basically changed the character. So the character that you see is exactly the same, but then I added in a lot of backstory and made him the most despicable parent-killing piece of shit on the planet. And it just informed the character a bit more, because in the film, you see him and he's like, yeah, he's a rich guy who collects art and he's a bit of a dick. Mm-hmm. But there was no more to that. So I wanted to explain why he's a dick and why he doesn't know what the hell he's buying. Like, for a guy who buys antiquities, he's a bit stupid. So I added in some more of that. And as an aside, there was a review of that book where somebody said, oh, I don't like this book because he didn't add in, there's nothing different from the film, and he makes it so every rich person is great and every poor person's horrible. I was like, I literally made the richest guy in there the biggest piece of shit. How dare you? Read the book.
Oh, Lord.
But yeah, but that was how I did Wishmaster. And I realized that it was a kind of a backwards way of doing it, by just writing the quick thing, then going back. And I thought that, even though I'm really proud of how it turned out, I think I labored on it too much, of trying to be as respectful to the script as possible, even though I added in a couple of little things. So the next one, Titan Find, because I hadn't seen it for so long, I literally started page 1 and just went through so slowly for each scene. And then the further I got, the more plot holes there were, because Titan Find, or Creature, is a rip-off of Alien. And William Malone, Bill admits this. He's fine with it. He's like, yeah, that's why they hired me. That's what we did. And the script is fantastic. The script's, I mean, yes, the film has dated now, and obviously sort of some of the acting is a bit wooden now, but that's of the time. The script itself is fantastic, and I had fun reframing a lot of scenes and making them more novel-like. And I changed not that much. It's still the same film. The things I changed was the dialogue, because when you're writing an old film, especially 70s, 80s films, they don't hold up in a modern light.
No. No.
Like, you're sitting there and you're going, oh, I can't write that. Like, there's whole bits in Titan Find with Klaus Kinski's character from the film where he's basically just molesting everyone. He's just a piece of shit. And I know he's a piece of shit, but I still have a few core things I will never write. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to write a rape scene. I'm never going to write an animal being like mercilessly killed unless it's integral to the plot. I'm never going to write anything abusive, homophobic, or anything unless it's 100% needed, which most of the time it is not. You don't need real hatred in a book, or real sort of ignorance or arrogance. And so I dropped a few bits because they were written for a character to be a bad character, and on film it works. Writing it out and having to extend the scenes to actually feel like a chapter, it just couldn't do it. And to be fair, exactly the same problem with Vamp. Now, Vamp, I kind of went to town on. I wrote the script. All of the script is there. I added in a lot, but that's because Donald Borchers, the producer, again, lovely guy. His main thing is that he wants Vamp to live on. He doesn't just want to do a novelization and then it's been and gone and that's it, and then there's no point to it. He wants Vamp to be a mini series or a remake film, and this is kind of a way of doing that. It was doing the novelization, but expanding it to over double the length of what it should do, and adding in completely new. Like, I think the actual story is 45,000 words from the film, and I added in 38,000 words of new plot and new backstory, and it's just for that point to expand the world, but be respectful to the world, but also don't rely on the 80s misogyny, which it's obviously it's frat boys going to a strip club. I mean, I felt bad. Like, I think I only referred to the word stripper once. Like, I felt bad writing that. So I was basically called them dancers, performers, and writing a sex scene. I always find writing a sex scene, that's just difficult. Yeah, she gets her boobs out. I don't know what you do. It's for this. It was, we have one sex scene, and I tried to make it a bit more. I try to amp up everything, and that was because, like, if you look at Wishmaster, Titanfind, and then Vamp, they're all written for different reasons. Like, Wishmaster was because we wanted to do a novelization of a film we loved, like Encyclopocalypse, and I wanted to do it. I asked to do it, and having that chance started Encyclopocalypse on a road to be able to go, oh wait, nobody's doing this. Why aren't people writing novelizations of old films? I mean, granted, 99% of the time you will never get the rights because studios lock that down. But thankfully, like, Pete Atkins owned his rights. Same with Bill Malone had Titanfind. But then, like, Wishmaster was written out of respect for that. Titanfind was more of an experiment to see if because it's so obscure a film, really. We wanted to basically, like, well, for me anyway, I wanted to make it more contemporary and more to showcase the story, as opposed to saying, because it's an effects film, as opposed to saying, here's an old sci-fi film that rips off Alien. I wanted to make it so it wasn't a rip-off of Alien. So it was something like, try and elevate it in a way. And Vamp was expanding it so it can be a new IP and a new property, because all of these books I write for novelizations, they own. Like Donald Borchers owns my Vamp book, the rights to it, 100%, and that's part of the deal. Okay. Like, so as a writer, it's kind of like everyone goes, "Oh, you've written that book?" It's like, yeah, and I'll get a percentage of it until Encyclopocalypse stops publishing it, and after that point, whoever owns the rights can do with it as they will. Like, that's the case with the Fright Night book novelization or the Reanimator one. The rights. So, like, Tom Holland owns the Fright Night book. He didn't write it. He wrote the script, but he didn't write the novelization, but he owns it outright. And that's kind of the way it goes. But with novelizations, you're kind of, it depends on the who owns the rights and what they want from it. I mean, you get some of them that sit there and go, no, I want this 100% the film. And you go, nah, maybe not. And others just don't, that just give you a blessing. And like Bill Malone and Pete Atkins are just like, yeah, do as you will. Because they're just happy they're happy that people are going to have a chance to see their work again and actually breathe new life into their work. Because if somebody comes and buys Titanfind and reads it and then likes it, they'll then watch the film if they haven't seen it before. I mean, a lot of reviews I get for the novelizations are people saying, I've never seen this film before, but now they're going to go hunt it down, whether it's to see if it's like the same.
For sure. So you also do like the audiobooks a lot on Encyclopocalypse, not just your own, although I did appreciate what you added to the sacrifice of Anton Stacy with the music. I that's not like a joke. I genuinely thought that added a lot to
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
the
Yeah, the
story.
audiobooks was really, well, thing is that how it started was when Mark Miller started up Encyclopocalypse, it was an audiobook company. There was no print books, no ebooks. It was just audiobooks because he had a lot of experience making them before and realized he had a knack for it and knew how to record them, knew how to produce them, and saw so many books that were dead in the water and were like published 20 years ago and people forgot about, and stupidly so, because some of them are absolutely breathtaking. Like things like John Shirley. John Shirley is a spectacular writer, yet his books weren't on audiobook, and we just didn't know why. Yeah, he adapted quite a lot of cool stuff, and people love the adaptation, the novelizations, but they don't look at his original stuff. And like Dracula in Love is, if anyone hasn't read it, it's mad. It's completely batshit, and it makes it look like a romance book. No, it's just mad, and that's it. It's but like my books, really. I think that's probably maybe where it comes from. But what happened was, gotta love lockdown. Gotta love it. I found myself with a shit ton of time. I was furloughed from work, so I was here going, all right, what do I do now? So I'd written, by this time I had written Everyday Monsters and Anton Stacy, but they weren't published. I wasn't even looking to publish them, but Mark convinced me to do them as audiobooks, and we weren't going to do them as print or ebooks at all. So as a tester I was going, all right, well, I've got time off. I know I'm written these books, but let's forget about them for a moment. What do I do? And Mark gave me a lot of information of how to record, what instruments to use. So I got them. And the first book, nothing like jumping in at the deep end. I got Reanimator. And I was like, can't I just have a book that no one's going to care about? Do I have to have one with a built-in audience? Like, they're going to judge me. And it's not like a book that you can read and actually just be normal. Like, well, I'm going to do a voice of a severed head now. And so I got into it that way. And I'm actually glad that Americans can't hear my accent, because all they can hear, most people outside of England, all they can hear is kind of a well-spoken Englishman, which is nothing against Americans, but it's just what you hear in the accent. And same as a lot of English people can't hear differences in regional dialects with Americans. They can hear New York, Valley Girl, and Texas. Everything else is just nothing. But I have a slight West Country accent, which is more of a farmer's accent. And so if I try and when I try to do auditions for audiobooks by an Englishman or from an English rights holder, 100% of the time they always write back and go, "Oh yeah, not a Welsh, not a West Country guy. No, we don't want that." So all the ones I started with were American written ones, and so I started with Reanimator and had to record it 4 times because I was still learning the craft and learning how to not just perform, but the technical aspects. Like, I thought I recorded it fine, and it turns out you can hear like cats meowing in the background from next door's garden. But then I started with that, and then I was like, okay, that's 3 days of lockdown done. I had 8 months ahead of me. So each time was a new audiobook, and I was like, oh, I'll record that. So it's like, oh yeah, here's Taking Shape 1 and 2. They're like, I think 40 hours of audiobook about the making of Halloween films. I don't even like Halloween films.
It's okay. That is a reasonable thing to say. That franchise is a mess.
Number three is genius. The rest,
yeah,
I don't get it.
Did you watch sorry to go into the weeds here. Have you watched the 4K remasters of the first 5 that Shout Factory put out?
I I saw them advertised and I laughed so hard at the design at the front because they were so shit.
Oh, they're so bad looking,
But
but
I didn't know.
they're
Are they?
pretty good transfers. All things considering, I will say this: Halloween until Halloween 2018, the
Mhm.
novelizations they wrote are so
Oh,
much better than the
yes.
films. Especially, I was so impressed by the original.
Hmm.
It's so bizarre, like that. It's Michael Myers is the spirit of we reviewed it on Paper Movies, but
Yeah.
like he's the so of a Samhain like
Oh yeah.
festival. So bizarre, and then they don't bring it up again.
It's quite it's quite great. I mean, it's even though I don't like Halloween. When narrating those books, I got to learn so much of the story behind it, but the stories they didn't tell. Like the
Mhm.
amount there's one of the, I think Taking Shape 2 is the lost sequels. So it goes into details of every single sequel they were going to make, but that got cancelled. And they are mad. They are
Oh
completely
yeah,
mad. And also, here's a little aside of how stupid I am. I thought it was pronounced Sam Hain, not Samhain.
that's okay. Donald Pleasance pronounces it Sam Hain in the second one.
And that's why I pronounced it like that, because before reading them, I thought, well, I'll watch the films. I had no idea. I got to the end of, oh God, do you realize how many times you have to say that word in a book about Halloween? Well, especially when you get to Halloween 3 and the amount of like pickups I had to do for that. Like Mark's laughing at me, like calling me and laughing at me, going, how could you pronounce that like that? I was like, I didn't know. And like, but then it's the same with the making of Phantasm books. Like, for some reason, I don't know how to speak Spanish. So I don't know how Dos Equis or whatever it's called, the beer that's drank. I have no idea how it's pronounced. I think I called it Dos Equis for God knows how
Oh,
long.
Dos Equis, yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. But that's my own stupidity. But for the audiobooks, yeah, I just lockdown. It was I kept doing it. Then I think end of month 2 was when Mark was like, how about I start up a ebook and print? I mean, I'm publishing these on Audible. They've got KDP, Amazon do, or we could do them on Ingram Spark or even the Barnes and Noble one. Why don't we just do print books? We've got the rights to these, the audiobooks. I'm sure I can get the print rights as well, which he did. And he managed to start getting them. And he's like, yeah, let's start doing this. Then ebooks started. He knew I was a designer, obviously, and said, do I want to like lay out all the books and typeset the books and do print ones as a tester to see if, I don't know, to see if anyone would like them, because both of us were under the opinion that print might be dead for these kind of books. Because if people are going to buy a horror book from the 90s, they'll want the original pressing. They won't necessarily want a new one. They'll want the actual Fright Night one that costs $100 on eBay.
If you're
Not one,
lucky.
yeah, not one that'll cost you $10 for exactly the same thing. But we tried it. And so concurrently while doing audiobooks, I was creating ebooks and print books. And by the time I got to do the audiobook for Everyday Monsters, I was concurrently making the print book and reading it as a way of proofing. So me doing Everyday Monsters, that's me reading it for the first time aloud and hadn't had it properly proofed. I had it edited for spelling mistakes, but for story-wise, I hadn't. So I was sitting there just going, oh, so having to go back, like stop the recording, go back, rewrite that. That makes more sense. Okay, now on to the next one. So it was kind of if it wasn't for lockdown, we wouldn't be talking now, because Everyday Monsters might have been an audiobook read by someone else. It might have been out in print. I don't know. But we wouldn't have got onto novelizations at all. But it was lockdown. Lockdown did everything. It enabled me to, well, the lockdown last, I think I wrote 3 novels, or audiobooks, 29 audiobooks, and probably did about 100 book and audiobook covers and typeset about 30 books. It was very productive. And all right, COVID's horrible. How, people died and it's a tragedy.
Mhm.
For me, it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I loved it.
You got a lot done.
Yeah, I got a lot done, and I don't realize I'm in the minority. I got a lot done, didn't get COVID, so kind of good.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I will what scares you? Like when you're reading horror, which by the way, I'm assuming you read quite a bit of horror. Um,
Mhm.
what really gets you going? Like what scares you like when you're reading?
I suppose it's completely different to like movie scares. Like
Mhm,
obviously jump scares don't happen. It's I think the thing that scares me the most is the sense that reality is changing. Which is probably why I write about that a fucking hell of a lot. Like my books are basically just like, this is reality. No, it isn't. I'm changing it. It's the sense of, I think the thing that scares me is what you think you know, you don't know. Like, so I suppose when you have a character in a book who you know as a reader that something is coming, but they don't know, I kind
mhm,
of get invested in their journey, which is, I suppose, why I adore Stephen King books, because most of his protagonists have no idea what's going on, but he will tell the reader, and the reader
mhm.
knows that outside the window, it's a vampire and it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
You know, the kid's just going, "Oh, it's Danny Glick. I might, I'll let him in. He's floating, but yeah, I might let him in." It's that kind of thing. Like I think Salem's Lot is one of my favorite books of all time. There's nothing like it is basically just there's nothing like new thought in it. It's not like a brand new take on vampires, but it is a way of writing that filled me with so much dread and just shook me to the core. I mean, I first read that when I was about probably 10,
Oh,
and
okay, yeah. Yeah.
it really left an impact on me to the point where I didn't read for a few years afterwards because I was there. I adored it, but I was just had to keep rereading the book to get through this adventure. And it kind of, I think it informed what I adored about writing. And it's trying to give something that, trying to couch something different when in normality. Like that's a lot more normal than my books, which just, you know, go through levels of hell. But it's it's kind of a skewed mirror kind of thing because like I can't write like King and very few people can, but
Mhm.
if you actually read any of his books, they seem 100% normal. And then something weird happens, but that seems normal within that world, and it's not. Whereas my books are something absolutely mental happens, and I'm just expecting you to go along with it. But most people might not be able to like focus on the story enough to carry on because it's just too out there and there's not. Whereas the thing that scares me is normality and things happening in that normality, because then you relate it to your own life. Whereas my books, there's nothing in your own life like this. Like, apart from if you take the rot out of Anton Stacy, that's
Mhm.
a normal story about normal people.
Yeah.
Any of the other books, you take any of the aspects out, it's still fucking insane.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know. I still don't know why I called a monster the Moogle. Like,
That is something I
really, I it was one of those things that it was actually a monster I created with Mark for a script we wrote, but it wasn't called the Moogle. It was just the look of it. But then when I came to actually write it, my brain just went, "That's a good one." And it was when I got to the end of it, I looked back and went, "Why did I choose that?" But I kept it for basically like names are weird. I don't quite understand what like how the brain transfers a name to be normal. Like band names are 100% guilty of this. Their name is actually nonsense. Radiohead. You think of it, you think Radiohead, and you just think of the band. You don't think of the words, and that's why I kept it because I was like, going, it's a stupid name. It's a stupid. It's a stupid word that doesn't exist. But maybe it would, like when people talk about it, like you'll know what it is. If somebody says Moogle, they're not going to confuse it with another monster. Whereas I might have vampires that are different to normal vampires, but I call them vampires. But for some of the monsters, I'll make shit up and try and make it its own thing. But that one, I kind of, on retrospect, I probably could have given it a more threatening name,
Uh,
but I
yeah, I suppose. I didn't mind it.
didn't.
Although I'm still a big fan of the Leech.
The Leech is wonderful, and it's actually the Leech is actually Mark Miller,
Okay.
not from what he does, but because of someone once called him, basically said that he's a leech, and in a fit of fury called basically this piece of shit we once knew. treated him like he was like that character. And I basically just went with it. I just went, oh, I'm gonna do that. That's why he's called Mark. Like, I didn't even hide it. Like another character I've got, Mears. He's based on my friend Ben Mears, who worked with Mark and I as well. And nothing like nothing like the character. The only thing in relation is he drives the same shit stinky car. And he's got the same surname. But that's where I base it off. I mean, when I put real characters into the books, like real people I know, it will either be the name and something so obscure to do with them, but won't actually be anything like them, because what's the point of writing a character if these people exist? But it's Mark that pointed out. I had no idea until I finished Incubus. He pointed it out how autobiographical both of those books are. And then he went through going, yeah, it might seem weird, but this is this bit, this is this bit in this life. This is what happened to us then, isn't it? And I'm like, wow, didn't see that. Had no idea. But obviously I had some demons I had to get out of my system.
That's a good way of doing it, yeah.
But it did leave me with this, the end of Incubus left me with, oh shit, I've got to write another one now. Like, I know what's going to happen. I know the ending of the next one. I know what Gobalt the Wolf is going to do. I know what the Black Witch is going to do. I know how the Rot is coming into it. But it's finding that story to actually tell, because I want the book to be on its own. I want the book to be like Incubus, that you can read it. And all right, anyone who reads Incubus first might get to the end and then go, all right, that's happened, but I don't quite get what this scene is, because it's a bit weird, but okay. So I've got to try and do the same thing, that it's a standalone, but it does tell the story without having to go over and reintroduce characters for a new audience. Because in this day and age, this isn't the 80s. Like, readers don't go with the first book all the time. Like, they just go with one that has the prettiest cover a lot of the time nowadays. Same with like music. They'll just pick a song that has a title they like. They won't listen to an album as it's created from beginning to end. They'll go on Spotify and press shuffle, which that's just heartbreaking.
It is.
Well, especially when you listen, like as I said, my first album I bought was AC/DC's Who Made Who. That is literally crafted to be an album about the film, and even has the instrumental bits, and some of it is just like a weird instrumental break if you listen to it on shuffle and go, well, that makes no sense.
Yeah, putting DT on.
I know. Nobody does that. That's normally like, you get halfway through and go, all right, now I can see this. And Ride On is one of the greatest songs ever written. So glad it's in there. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. It's the kind of so for these, I know that even if it's one person, even if there's only one reader that picks up what will be the third book and reads none of the others, I don't want to waste their time with a story they don't understand. So I think like that's why I end up like at the end with Gobalt under the tree. That's for the next book, that image is where it's going to pick up from.
Okay.
But it's not going to carry on from that image. It's going to basically be that image, then go into another story relating to a long time after that. And then we'll pick up with him throughout the story. But Gobalt is basically the focal character of all of the books. He's not in the first book.
He's mentioned,
but he's not. He is the character that I want to write for, but he's not going to be human for a long time. Like, for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, I don't care. You can read it and then get it.
Yeah, exactly. I've praised these books enough. You can go check them out.
But yeah, that's basically it. I'm not. He's not going to be human for a while, because I want to explore more about the world. And there's been so many changes in the book. There's been so many realities changed, gods killed and raised, that there has to be, as I said, there has to be consequences. And the next book is all about consequences, not just of reality changing, but consequences for all the actions that you've read in the past two books and how it actually affects everyone. I mean, you've got Frank, who is now who, I won't ruin it, but he is now who he is. And he was obviously going to be in it, but not much, because the story isn't about him. He's had his story, he's had his arc, he's had his redemption. He will come back into it at some point, but the next book isn't about him. He'll be in it, but he's done his story. Whereas if you look at Gobalt, he hasn't had a real story. He's in the middle of a redemption that hasn't been resolved.
Yes.
And yeah, so that sounded really like artsy of me, and like I was overthinking it. But yeah,
No, you got the point across. So I do have a question for you.
yeah,
When it comes to, especially in Everyday Monsters, there's some pretty funny, like dark humor moments in
yeah.
there. How do you balance that with the horror? Like,
It's weird. It's like every time I write, I naturally write lighthearted. I don't like writing something really dark is difficult. Like it's if you ever read the novelization of Vamp, that was probably the most difficult thing I had to write because there is moments of levity in it, but I actually made it a lot more introspective and kind of depressing in a way, but for a reason. So it was very difficult writing that. And so that was a little experiment because normally I write kind of like everything's jovial, everything's like got a quip, everything's like just a funny thing to happen. But while I'm writing it, I have to be conscious that it's a horror. So normally, I the one thing I stupidly do, but because it's totally ripped off from Stephen King, the whole thing of he listens to music while writing. I know his is disco music, so I wouldn't do that. I normally listen to a band on like with one headphone in, just even if it's one song that I'm trying to like emulate a tone of, if that makes sense.
mhm.
So, you know, for Everyday Monsters, for say a battle scene, I might sort of play some kind of just heavy metal kind of thing that would be the theme tune to that scene in an 80s film. And it kind of focuses my attention. So I've got this scene, I'm doing a funny comment, but my brain is being pushed by this music to try and focus it into another way. And I try and do that with a lot of my writing. Less so with Everyday Monsters, because I was still figuring out a way to write, really, to figure out a way to tell a story in the best way. That's why Everyday Monsters has a lot more humor in it than Incubus does. Whereas, so that's, I think you actually picked up on that in your reviews.
Yeah, well, I mean, Incubus starts off with one of the most horrific things I had read in a while. That
Again,
was shocking.
yeah, that first scene was a comic that I wrote that I had. It got inked up and everything. They've got some art for it, but it was only like a first like 4 pages. I impressed myself with that because if as a writer you write a scene and then you're writing, and then if you do this, you've done a good job, because normally the person who writes it doesn't get affected by what you're writing unless it's about serious subjects. If you're writing horror, you're not going to get that affected. You're not going to get that scared by something you write, especially when you're writing and it's got jokes in it and you're like writing everything's like kind of funny. But I did realize that it was jarring, that because a lot of the humor I did in Everyday Monsters, it normally is just before something absolutely horrible happens.
Yes.
But that after a while, after halfway through writing that, I started to realize that was the case and started to lean into it more and started to go, no, I realized that I'm actually like, I didn't ever read any extreme horror, like the kind of what people call splatterpunk or something. I still don't actually know what splatterpunk is, to be honest. But I never read that. I read mine, as I said, Stephen King, kind of the classic horrors. James Herbert was one of my all-time favorites. And they're kind of very normal horrors that have violent moments. But my imagination was making me write even more grotesque things than I read. And a way to, as I carried on writing, I realized that was the case. I realized I'm going, wait a minute, this is just absolutely vile. Like after Vix, who is the Sicarian in the first one, Vicky, named after my girlfriend, also described as her as well. So that's good. But when she hurls herself off the cliff and lands on the rocks and then wakes up because the Sicarian won't let her die, that was the moment where I realized how grotesque I was being. And I hadn't realized up until then. I had no idea. I was just there going, oh, I'm just writing some scenes. There's some death in it 'cause it's a horror film, a horror book. But I didn't really grasp what I was writing. So from then on, I was realizing, wait, and I kind of knew a generic where it was going to go. I knew some key scenes, but because I tried to do the map out thing, it didn't really work. You know, when you beforehand, and some people have like post-its everywhere, this whole journey, they do character arcs. Now, as I said, I just wrote and didn't think about it. But beforehand, I did have one A4 piece of paper with about 10 things written on it, which were basically like, I don't know, they find a god. God changes reality type thing, that kind of broad strokes. And I knew I was getting somewhere. I knew that I was going to deal with such, like I introduced the Moogle, who has to have a payoff. Something bad has to happen to the Moogle, because the Moogle is a horrible creature that mercilessly kills people. You can't not have something weird. And I had a nightmare where I met the Moogle, like the Moogle killed me. And I was eaten by the Moogle and fell into the void of his stomach.
Oh God, yeah.
And that character, the vampire character that does that was my nightmare. So I wrote that scene almost verbatim as I saw it, because I got up from, like, I don't have like waking like I can't hear my thoughts, but my dreams are very vivid. So I got up and I just wrote that whole scene down. And was like, that was it. And then I just adapted when I got to actually telling that, because I knew how grotesque that was. So I had to kind of make it kind of not lighthearted, because in that scene there aren't really jokes or anything really funny happening. But I tried to make, like, I kept jumping back to, or jumping aside to Jaden and that in front of the god, and just like kind of counterpointing what was happening there with me knowing how horrific this was going to be and how violent it was going to be, and really how depressing that I was giving the Moogle its comeuppance, but I was also doing something even worse to an innocent creature, which was quite difficult, because as I said, horror, when you write horror, you don't really feel that much for the characters. It's normally the readers that do that. But I did. Not really for the main characters, but for, like, say, the little vampires. The little vampire story of me changing what they are to something completely different, that was actually really dear to my heart, that story. Because I had the thought when I was a kid, because I used to read this big book called Encyclopedia of Things That Never Were. And it was a lovely big book that had it's an encyclopedia of just descriptions of different monsters.
Oh,
it was absolutely beautiful. And it's, I think you can get, I got mine on eBay. So, but it's like a really big encyclopedia with absolutely beautiful illustrations. And I kept, as a kid, I was just going over it again and again, reading all these different things. But it's written in a way that, yes, there are dark things, but it covers things of light and dark, of myth and mystery, of things that are real even. And I was enchanted by the monstrous things that weren't monstrous. The things that were kind of like, yeah, they're monsters, but they're also innocent, beautiful creatures. And that obviously informed a lot of the way I develop stories and develop characters, because I'm conscious of writing things that are not just two-dimensional and obviously just awful. Of course, you've got to have those characters. You've got to have the big bad, but it's kind of two-dimensional. There's no way you can get out of that, because if you have a really bad guy and then you make him like quite nice, it's not really a bad guy then. So, or bad girl in my case, seeing as I only realize now. I think, yeah. So the first one, well, right, the Lord of the Flies hasn't got a sex, but goes Vicky. That's a girl. Second one, Incubus. Yeah, there's a lot of women. I haven't got a thing against women. I only realize now, going, oh wow, they are actually a lot of bad guys are female, but that's only because I really think that there is so much, like, women in general in horror are badly underrepresented, badly, not just for actual as authors, which of course they are, but as characters, bear in mind that throughout the last, well, God knows how long, it's always been male authors, really. writing stories about men where there's a woman right there, and that's basically it. That's as far as it goes, and there's not really much beyond that. And of course, that's because people normally write what they know, and they write a character that they can give a true voice to. I tried something different because I want to have stories of everyone. And I do a book called Everyday Monsters. It's not just about monsters, it's every day. It's supposed to be, I'm trying to do represent the world as I see it and what a story within that. So that's, that. I don't know what the point of me saying that was. Kind of lost my train of thought.
Oh no, you're good. It kind of segues me into how much does like the news and like our reality here affect your writing? Like, do you ever just watch the news and you're like, okay, I gotta put this in my writing?
Kind of, yeah. It's the Anton Stacy is 100% like the idea of the whole idea of the rot killing things is metaphorical, of course. It's obviously literal in the books, but it's metaphorical in a kind of, it's the rot of people in general, like the weird, like how people over the past decade have reverted from on the, it's going to sound really pompous, but kind of like on a path to enlightenment where we're supposed to be more like with the internet, we're supposed to know more, we're supposed to feel more, we're supposed to be able to do more to help, we're supposed to be able to look at someone from the other side of the planet and see a kinship with them, even though they're 100% different to us in every respect. We were on our way doing that. And then all of a sudden, this fear and hatred and just pure bile of the worst of humankind started to rear its head and pull large chunks of the world back in. I don't know. I'm not normally a political person. I never really gave a shit about politics. Like growing up, I didn't care. It's the whole thing of like, yeah, well, they're all the same, which most of the time they are. But it's kind of the devil you know and the devil you don't. And the devil you don't is so much fucking worse. Of course, I'm talking about, like the Trumps and the Boris Johnsons and the Vladimir Putins of the world, who rely on fear and hate to twist people's perception just for their own personal gain and for not really the benefit of humanity. And of course, religion is a key influence for me. I am an atheist, always have been, but I am absolutely fascinated by religion and I have respect for anyone who's religious. Don't care. But when they get the religious teachings and twist them to their own means, like any fundamentalist religion will do, whether, the Crusades, anything like, where every religion is guilty of it. Like, no, I hate the fact that people pick on Islam as an evil because of a small minority that have become the majority, the vocal voice. But Christians are more guilty of it than anyone. Not me, Christian. That's just a ironic name. But yeah, so that seeing like the hatred of religion kind of start to dissipate, like how the world banded together after 9/11 and kind of started to like, apart from the horrific wars that go on, there was a lot of normal people started to actually see positivity in everything and try and get closer and try and work together to do things. And I don't know how it suddenly shifted the other way. And that is the whole reality shifting that I constantly write about is directly parallel to that. And how I don't understand it. I don't understand how you can go from loving your neighbor one day to utterly despising them just because someone you've never met before makes up a story about them. Like, not about them in general. Like, I feel so bad. I mean, I'm half Arabic. So obviously I'm a very pale Arab. And my brother is a darker Arab and actually looks Arabic and has had a lot of racism aimed at him while growing up because he looks Arabic. I don't, and I've never experienced racism personally, even though, because they can't see what culture I'm derived from. But I'm blessed in that way that I get to like know the culture, but see it from like the white perspective. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. And I don't like, after 9/11, of course, everyone turned on the Arabs. Everyone turned on the Arabs. And again, I never got it. I was standing aside just going, oh, fuck, this is terrifying. But then it started to get better. It started to get better. Then reality shifted. And I don't know what the key was. Because obviously, if somebody goes, why did everyone turn against anyone Islamic all of a sudden? 9/11. That was the crutch point for everyone who really didn't know and were scared. It made people fear something they didn't know. So they lumped it on one group of people instead of the group of people that actually did it. But because of the whole, what I was saying about like the Stephen King thing, like there's the big bad, but the people living it don't know what the big bad, don't know why it's happening. That's kind of where I'm at most of the time, because I'm looking around the world going, when did this happen? Like, when did suddenly a woman's rights become bad? Why are women not allowed rights anymore? Like in Texas, when did that happen? Like, I thought we were supposed to be on a good path, and then you sit and go, wait, they're storming the Capitol building because they think they've been told a lie and they believe it. And here, like, you're going, why the hell did most of my country vote out of the EU? I have no idea. Like, literally everyone going, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be in the EU because foreigners. Like, all right, that's your reason. Foreigners, and I'm British. Like, yeah. And nothing, just foreign and British. And I want a flag. Now it's basically for some reason, old people got scared. Old people got fed the lie that everything is bad with the EU, and they came out and voted. It's unfortunate, but that's what happened. So yeah, in answer to your question, directly related and fucking terrifies me.
Yeah. We talked a little bit beforehand, and I wanted to bring up your how the diversity in your books and like your theme, especially in Everyday Monsters, but also at the end of Incubus, we get into this a bit where we have monsters all living together, like in the open.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, yes, it is all a metaphor. I mean, if I said it wasn't, it would be a big fucking lie. Yeah, it's a massive, but like as I said, I'm really pro inclusion for horror stories because there haven't been any, and basically, I'm not saying like I would love to be a huge writer and actually have books in all the shops that people could read, so there would be inclusion out there. Same with all the people that are writing the same kind of things, to have sort of LGBT characters, to have characters of all races. But the way I do that is when I say everyday monsters, it's not just talking about actual monsters. It's what people see as monsters. So what the pieces of shit of the world will look at a gay man and see him as monstrous, but he's not. So the monsters I do actually have, the actual monsters, most of them are fine. Most of them are nice, normal people, and they just want to live their life and be happy. And so what if they look that way? So what if they choose to do what they do? It's no business of yours, but they're there. Of course there are, but so it's kind of like, it's all multifaceted how I'm telling the story, because I didn't want to be that kind of writer that says, okay, I want to write about Black characters and lesbians, and then just basically just crowbar in and just basically have a character and then say, well, I'll just say that they're Black. That makes them Black. And this person, I'll say they're a lesbian and they're in the book. If you read, they're in that part of the book. So therefore I'm inclusive. It's like, no, I want to write a story about normal people who could be considered by pieces of shit to be kind of monsters, as the LGBT community has been persecuted for forever. So the whole point of like, you've got, especially in the sequel, in Incubus, you've got like the main two characters are both gay. You've got obviously Ferenc is gay and also based on real people, which was I changed history for that. Like Elizabeth Bathory is obviously Elizabeth, that's obviously her, and Ferenc was really her husband. But I changed reality myself. I took real life and completely fucked with it. And obviously they've been dead a long time. It doesn't matter if I make shit up about them.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Bathory was, by all accounts, a piece of shit. Her husband wasn't, so I changed. So I made him really not a piece of shit and a good person. But I wanted to start with, throughout all the books, each person, whether good, bad, real monster or imagined monster, they're basically neutral at the beginning. And the fact they're monsters has nothing to do with the actual story. It's just there happens to be them. It's not part of the story. They are there, and that it might make somebody might make a comment. It's got nothing to do with the actual story because they're everyday monsters. They're everyday. They're everyday people. They're everyday everything. It's like they're normal. Everyone is normal in their own box, kind of thing. So the fact that Ferenc is gay and in a loveless marriage doesn't matter. The point of him being gay leads him on to why he does everything and why his marriage is like that, because it actually informs the story of what he's doing. You've got let's see, who else? Oh, Anton Stacy. The character of Anton is gay. He has to be, because I'm telling a story about family division in a southern state in America. So the easiest way to do that, and it's as a short story, the easiest way to do that is by making him gay, because the reader will be able to know straight away the effects from it, the effects of what's happening. And like if they say his father's a pastor and he hates him because he's gay, or because he saw him when he was a child and considered him effeminate or whatever, the reader's going to automatically know all the connotations that go with that I don't have to write. And if Anton wasn't gay, there probably wouldn't have been a story to tell. The pastor still probably would have died, but he would still be living at home and the rot would still have got them, but there would be no actual character story. So I don't want to just, even though I do just, like, somebody might be LGBT in my story, but I try my best to make the fact that they are part of them and part of their motivation, instead of just saying, oh, here's a character, I wrote them as a man, but I'm going to change them to a gay woman now, just by changing pronouns and changing how they, without actually thinking of how they talk and how they interact and how what they've experienced has any real effect. Whereas all my characters that are LGBT, what they do has a real effect. Like their beliefs are, like the fact that someone might be gay is part of them. So that, of course, it's going to impact of how people see them and how they see people. And I tried my best. I don't know. I mean, I would love to know from an LGBT perspective how, if what I have written reads as genuine. I really hope it does. And I was kind of painstaking about that. And I rewrote both books quite a few times to try and make everything more genuine and make it seem less pasted and just made up. Because as I told you before we started, like in the 80s, a lot of authors were writing books and just, if there was a black character, it literally was just, there's a black character. That was basically it.
I feel, as someone who reviews a ton of books at this point, I mean, like after this, I have 5 reviews I'm filming. So like I have notes out, and a few of them, they have like diversity, but I call it forced diversity, where it's like a checklist and it just doesn't feel smooth. Like it feels like the author, who isn't like part of this, like is just a white male, just feels like it just feels forced, and like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, and like just goes down the list, and you do that first, and then you're like, well, we'll just sandwich it into a story, and it just doesn't work, or they're trying to go for like a not very subtle political message that's like, at this point, we've been there, we've done that. If you're going to do that, you need to make it smooth. Like Everyday Monsters does it perfectly.
Thank you.
Like that's it's pretty much the point, right? Like,
I mean, and I would like to make a point, and it's my own failing as a writer. I tried to write one of my characters as non-binary when I started out. I can't do it. Have you tried writing like the pronouns? I started, and this character was supposed to be amongst a group of people, And I'm referring to the main character as they.
Yes.
When you're in a group of people and you say they did this, my brain literally capsizes. And I know someone who's a non-binary, and I asked them, and the answer was, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's something that my friend Matthew at the Geeks Addict, he came across that in some of like the newer Star Wars stuff,
Yeah.
where like it becomes really difficult to do that. And it's just something I think writing's just going to have to evolve.
Yeah. And
At
I would
this
love, I would love to know, I would love to, like, if there was if anyone out there is a writer and knows how to do it, do a course, charge people. I will pay to go on that course to find out how the fuck to do it, because I got confused.
Mhm.
Because I obviously you sit there and go, well, just refer to them as they, and refer to or refer to them just by their name, and then refer to all the other people by either their names or they for them, but don't refer to the non-binary person as they use their name. And it's like, have you ever tried to read something where it just says their name instead of they? It would be this reads like a bad kid's book. I ain't doing that. But no, I tried because originally the main character in Incubus, the female protagonist, she was supposed to be non-binary, and I couldn't do it. It was the scene with her and her friend in the museum when everyone goes batshit and turns on them. Yeah, they were doing a lot. Whoever they were, I don't know, but they were saying things and they were doing things, and I was confused as shit. And I can hear my dog.
See that now.
I can hear my dog. What are you doing? Sorry, my dog. If you can hear tapping, there's do you want to say hello? Come here. Just gonna get my dog.
Okay, there we go. We welcome all the. Oh, hello.
This is Echo. This is my little Patterdale Terrier. She's demanding.
Cutie.
She is. She's been in the garden with my girlfriend, sunbathing all day, because it's the one day of the year that there's sun, so everyone's out in the sun.
Sorry to take you away from the sun.
Oh, it's fine. I just had a nap. You know, I'm an old man now. I need my weekend naps. Like I get up at like 5:30 in the morning every morning. So when it gets to midday, it's like, oh, it's like the middle of the night now. I've been up late. I need to go to bed.
I feel that. I get up at 4:30 every morning to go.
It's like when you originally when you set up this interview and you were saying, oh, we'll do it at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and I was like, you're going to be awake at 8 doing this? I mean, I say that I would have been able to do it, but I was there going, other people do this?
I used to work graveyard shift. So
right, you haven't quite got over that then.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think I ever will. I'm fine with it. Like no one's up in the morning, so like you get a lot done. I actually had my boss in my current job change my schedule so I start at 7:30. Nice. And I'm off at 4:30. So like because like in the evening I kind of like done mentally. Which makes filming real fascinating. So that's why I do it on a weekend in a batch.
It's going to be quite a full day for you if you've got book reviews after this.
Oh, yeah, it'll be fine. I got one single cut. I get to review a novelization of The Spy Who Loved Me, not the novel The Spy Who Loved Me, which is bad. If you've ever read The Spy Who Loved Me,
Fleming is he's problematic.
He's problematic, especially when he writes a woman as the main character. Oh my god. So a guy named Christopher Wood got contracted to write 2 novelizations for Bond in the 70s, and he did The Spy Who Loved Me and he did Moonraker. And
that was a tough one.
And they're supposed to like I finished The Spy Who Loved Me. It feels like a Fleming book.
Yeah.
Like there's a scene where that has one of the most heinous torture scenes I've read in a Bond book. It involved a car battery on the nuts. Like right in the Fleming territory. He was the king of like just coming up with nasty things in the 50s.
Yep. It's every time I've read any Fleming, it's always been just reading it like going, oh, why did you? Oh God, no, I can't. No. There's a whole the term casual racism, and then there's just Ian Fleming racism.
Oh, he was an imperialist.
Yeah,
that was his thing. It's fun. Okay, Quality Autism, my co-host for Live and Let's Discuss Our Bond podcast, is like, that's my favorite scene ever. The ball. We have an episode coming up where I go on about it. I was reading it in my girlfriend's office, and she's just like, "Are you okay, babe?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm not gonna tell you."
You recommend that book over the original?
Yes. Oh, yeah. The original Bond's not even in it till the last third. It is the weirdest digression I've ever seen in a series.
I mean, what number is that in his books? I mean, was that like so
It's
far
near
into
the
it?
end. It's between Thunderball and On Her Majesty's Secret Service, right in that Blofeld trilogy.
Yeah. So he was phoning it in at that point.
Oh yeah, well and then You Only Live Twice is just he liked Japan. And then I will say though, Man with the Golden Gun, for not being finished, feels like an old Fleming book. He did go back before he died.
Yeah.
It's just he died in the middle of making it, so it's not as polished.
Yeah.
But what was it?
I was just going to say Bond is a weird one for me.
Oh yeah. It is the strangest series, and they're all reflective of their time, which is always
which I find amazing that they've made films, like continuing to make films of them.
Well, they aren't all good, I can tell you that.
We tried to watch I have no idea what it's called, the new one.
No Time to Die.
That's the one. Oh my god, what a bag of dicks that was.
It's 30 minutes too long.
I tried it. I was just the whole way through going, what the fuck's going on? And then it's like, what? He's killed by midichlorians. What the I don't get it.
Oh yeah. I think it's better than Quantum of Solace.
Quantum of Solace was literally like somebody just went,
well, yeah, that's what happens.
Let's make it into a film. Let's just make that weird pause into a film. Don't need any story. Just
the story, the short story it's based on, and when I say based on, they took the title from it. It's Bond's getting told a story about this guy and his wife cheating on him and how much he could take without being like embarrassed. It's a really good short story.
Yeah.
Like I just explained it. It sounds like the most boring thing ever, but it's actually really compelling. That's
a weird short story. Hey, Bond, you're in the short story. Let me tell you about someone else.
Yeah, it's like once again, it's in Jamaica because everything's in Jamaica because Fleming ended up living in Jamaica.
Well, write what you know.
Yeah, he loved Jamaica, although when it was imperial, under imperial rule. But yeah, no, it's his stuff so interesting, especially for the time. Like he has a short story about domestic violence in 1960. And is it your place to stop that?
Oh wow.
Or not? There's a few forward-thinking things for the time.
I was about to say, because domestic violence wasn't even a thing then. It was basically just slap the woman into place, I think was the consensus. And the fact that he was doing that, I mean, for a piece of shit he was, if he's writing that, good on him.
Yeah, I mean,
what did he end up with? Was he like,
well, no? Okay, so it's called the Hildebrand Rarity. Bond and one of his like friends, Bond's a free diver in his like spare time, and he's hired by this guy who thinks he's like Humphrey Bogart. Like they name drop Humphrey Bogart, and he thinks he's a tough American guy, and he beats his wife with a stingray tail, and like, which is actually taken and used in License to Kill.
Is the License to Kill are they picking up a stingray and whacking the tail, or
no? They rip the tail off because it's got the
somebody's not picking up a stingray, and I was about to say that's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, he keeps a stingray tail on him, and he beats her with it, and it's a lot of. He ends up getting killed, and it's a matter of who did it. And the Hildebrand Rarity is a special fish they have to go fish out of the ocean that they want for like a museum or something. Because it's still in that era where if you wanted an animal for a museum, you killed it and you stuffed it and put it in the museum. But like Bond's like, do I step in? Is this my business?
And was it his business?
Well, the guy's killed before that's even
That's
like
all right.
he gets a fish shoved down his throat. He chokes. With
That's a good way to go for being a piece of shit who beats people with stingray tails. Because
and
I keep my stingray tails around all the time.
yeah, yeah. Bond just covers up a murder that he doesn't know who murdered him by dumping him in the ocean.
He's literally the worst spy. I mean, I don't think he ever does any spying. Is it just
Um,
he's there when shit goes down and then goes and kills people?
on Her Majesty's Secret Service actually has a bit of spy. Like the books do delve into spy stuff, and like, I mean, Goldfinger, the golf scene.
Hmm.
If you read the golf scene, that's one of the best things like ever written right there. I don't give a shit about golf, but that right reading the golf scene in Goldfinger is excellent. Or they're playing Baccarat in Casino Royale, and he explains how it's played.
I might as well
That's
read it because I've
fascinating.
never known. I've never known. I've always thought, I wonder how that's played. I might read it just to see.
Oh yeah, no, I highly recommend it, but with the caveat of these are 50s books. What was acceptable then is not acceptable now. But there's some really good stuff. That's why we do live in Let's Discuss. Is there's some good stuff in there. There's just
Yeah,
some bad things thrown in.
it's like when you a few times where I've never actually had it personally, but with like reading audiobooks,
Mhm.
like there are certain words I will never say.
Oh yeah,
Never going to say it.
the same.
Not going to do it. But if it's in a book, it was the quandary of what happens if it's in a book? What do I do? And did it happen? No, it didn't. No, I have a recollection that there was I did one audiobook and I asked Mark if I could just not say the word and just change it. And he's like, yeah, doesn't matter. Literally doesn't matter. Like,
Mhm.
I think it was I'm trying to remember what book it was, but I can't. But he was like, yeah, the author's dead. It's fine. We've got the rights. You can literally change one word because certain things are like, especially 50s, you sit there and go, oh, of course, like imperialist attitudes are fine in the 50s
Mhm.
because everyone had it. If you're doing it now, it might seem a bit weird. And even though I'm narrating, I don't want to be associated with it. So, like when I'm, say, writing Vamp and I don't want to objectify women in it and just make it a description of like the strippers in it. Like,
Mhm.
hence why I don't call them strippers and why it's not I don't really go into that much detail about them because the characters, yeah, but what they do and what they look like naked, I don't. But I know that in the 50s or even like the 80s, even when that was made, it was
Yeah.
about objectifying it and it
Mhm.
was normal. So I was like, really, so that kind of thing, I've come up against like what was normal, having to rephrase it now or narrate it and then go, I can't do that. Can't do that. So I imagine that if these books, most of Ian Fleming's books are audiobooks already. So what do they do? Do they just read out everything? And even if
So
it's
at this point with the Bond franchise, they have used just about every title of Fleming's. Um, because the only thing I can think of, like they have they have never used the title property of a lady, but that's basically Octopussy.
oh
Octopussy, like the whole thing with the egg.
yeah,
Property of a Lady was written for this weird like jewelry magazine.
mm,
Like it was a one-off thing, and then when Octopussy and the Living Daylights came out, which was published after Fleming's death, they were just two short stories he had written, which
mm,
were Octopussy and the Living Daylights. Which Octopussy is about a dude who basically kills himself because Bond's going to arrest him because he's been trading secrets to the Russians, which is not in
yeah,
Octopussy. If I
no,
recall. It's with the more stuff they don't care because Roger Moore hated Fleming,
mm,
so he made Bond as not Fleming as possible. That was his whole thing, especially like starting with The Spy Who Loved Me on.
mm,
Moore's more focused on like talking his way out of things than like because Roger Moore couldn't fight. Let's be
yeah,
real. His fighting in like um Live and Let Die
mm.
is terrible.
Oh,
It's
he
like he
held,
took one
held a gun
karate
well.
lesson. I did martial arts for a number of years,
Mm,
and like I can tell when someone knows how to fight and when they don't. Like Sean Connery was a judo guy.
Hmm.
They just never choreographed things well for him. But
Well,
like,
he had the toupee on the whole time, so
oh yeah,
maybe they were worried it would fall off.
yeah, that toupee got more and more toupee-ish as it
It was a
went.
shock to me. I was shocked when I found that out, and I was probably in my 20s when I found out. I was like, "It's a toupee," and then I went back and was like, "How did I not see it? You can normally see these things a mile away."
Mhm.
But no, I fell for it hook, line, and sinker as a kid,
Well,
thinking, "Oh, it's his hair."
those movies aren't meant for high definition. For one thing, like the amount of nudity in a
Hmm,
lot of them that you couldn't see in standard def, and you can see, especially in 4K.
hmm.
Like some of them should be reassessed by the MPAA and put R on. The especially like the open credits where like you can tell like, oh, all these women are topless.
They just got them out. Yep.
They got them out. Because I always assumed they had like a leotard on, like as a
Mhm.
kid.
Yeah.
Like they just put skin colored leotard.
No,
Because I
just
mean, like, and if you ever watched the heavy metal movie, like the behind the scenes when they're rotoscoping, none of those women were naked. They're wearing skin color
yeah.
clothing, and
Which I
then
think is standard. So I think that says a lot more about the sort of the filmmakers who made Bond. Just going, no, you need to be naked. Yes.
oh yeah, the Broccoli's.
Yeah.
Um,
Strange thing, but then I found that like with 4K, 4K is either a blessing or boy, it's a curse, especially with horror.
with
Fucking hell.
horror, with any optical effect,
Yeah.
it's like, have you watched In the Mouth of Madness?
Which is also my white whale. I
Oh
have
yeah.
been trying to get that to novelize for a long time, and I'm still trying. I've reached out to everyone concerned. I mean, granted, Mike DeLuca, who wrote it, is obviously he's the head of NGM, so getting hold of him is difficult. I've got New Line Cinema. I'm trying to contact Robert Shea, but because I want to write the Sutter Kane books.
Oh,
That's
that'd
what
be
I want to do.
fun.
I want to write the Sutter Kane books and the like all five of them, and the sixth one, In the Mouth of Madness, will be the novelization.
That would be fun.
So that's the idea, because that's like that would be amazing. But yeah, I know what you mean. 4K In the Mouth of Madness, which I adore. I mean, I remember that film as like fondly. It's one of my favorite films, and oh no, watching
Yeah,
it.
it's the ILM effects in particular look bad, but they didn't look great to begin with. Like
No,
they just did it quickly.
yeah, and they were kind of, but when you're watching it on what you thought was good quality, which was low def VHS, which is the first time I watched it, it's kind of carries a charm with it, because if the picture isn't crisp, then any bad effects you kind of forgive.
Yeah.
When you can see people's sweat pores on their face, if you're that like crystal clear, seeing anything else just makes it look awful. Like that new Avatar trailer.
Mhm.
That looks like a terrible cutscene from a video game. It's
Yeah.
because we're so used to seeing everything in such high definition. When you're seeing something that's all high definition and all computer generated, it just looks fake. And I remember Avatar looking amazing first time I saw it, but then when I saw this trailer, my brain flipped back and went, "Oh no, no! This is it could look like this the whole way through. It's going to be
Yeah.
a long cutscene."
The thing with Avatar was it was a lot of pretty pictures and not a lot of substance.
Yeah, and this one's supposed to be. They go, "Oh yeah, he's changed the way to he's done more on this. You'll never see underwater stuff like this." Why didn't they show one shot of anything good in the trailer that was underwater? Like, show a few seconds of whatever this is that you've done. Like this, no, just show normal effects that look about as good as the sea effects in Phantom Menace. You know, or is it Attack of the Clones? Which is the one where they go where Django Fett goes
Attack
to
of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones. So the CFX in that, which is incidentally exactly the same CFX as Perfect Storm with George Clooney, they look as good. So how the hell is Avatar doing this? But that's a little rant over with. But yeah, so 4K. I think Avatar would have been so much better, and if it was low definition, like looking low definition. So you don't care about any effects, but we've become accustomed to seeing everything so crystal clear that we actually care about a bad effect.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't.
Well, it's just the human brain when you look at optical effects, it's something that isn't there. It doesn't look right. That's why I like practical effects, like all the Friday the 13th movies, like with all the gore. Like I got the Shout Factory box set, so I've been slowly watching through them, which those are just so fun because oh god, what is this? Tom Savini's effects. And dude went through Vietnam, so like it just, especially the first one. That's the only reason to watch that movie. That movie's horribly boring. Nothing happens for most of it, but when you get those, like in the unrated version, just the axe to like the face or just the throat cut, and it just looks.
Well, there are like people like Savini. They're legends. They have done amazing things. And like one underrated one that I've always adored is Screaming Mad George. Now, Screaming Mad George, he did Society. So I know you haven't seen Society by Brian Yuzna. Practical effects, like you like my books, they're crazy. Watch Society for the effects, because the effects at the end are, I mean, they are ridiculous, but they are just, it's pure imagination on screen, which is what I loved about Tom Savini. That yes, he was doing a lot of realistic stuff, like as in like an axe in a face, but so much of it is like completely like not really what they would look like his whole thing of like in Dawn of the Dead, like his makeup in that, a lot of it isn't realistic looking.
Oh no, Dawn of the Dead didn't have enough money for that.
But it basically, like, it was imagination. It was pure, like a lot of these effects guys, it is imagination. Like Steve Niles did it, like all, not Steve Niles, what am I talking about? he wrote a book. Can't remember who I'm thinking of. Effects guy. No, can't remember. But anyway, but like Savini and Scream Mad George, it literally is pure imagination on screen. And it's kind of like, I always equate effects guys to writers, because they're basically creating something out of nothing. But it is literally their imagination that frames it all. So I love that. That's why I kind of hate 4K when it shows how bad a practical effect is. Like, you kind of expect it with optical stuff. You sort of go, oh, well, yeah, it's computer generated and this was made on a computer that's like 20 years old. But when you got practical effects, like, I mean, granted, American Wealth in London still looks great to this day.
Oh, yeah.
Like Rick Baker is spectacular. But there are ones in, like, say, even in The Mouth of Madness, like where you've got like monsters. They're just, you sit there and go, and in 4K, that makes it look so rubbery. It really sort of jars you to look at it. And it's like, you know, or when you can see the seam around, like when they've got a cut on a face and you can see the seam of the outside of the latex. And it's like, oh, couldn't this just be lower quality now? So I used to get so excited when I found out that they found the negatives or they were redoing something as 4K. They were about to bring out the 4K of Dog Soldiers, which
I promoted that on here.
Yeah, which looks terrible on all the old prints, like just horrible. And they've never done a good print. And I just, fingers crossed, it will look so good that it won't have that problem, because it was a low budget film. So I'm just hoping that it's still, everything looks as impressive as it did then. But that's the thing, nature of 4K, I guess. Like,
well, there's just like certain films that they've never remastered well. Like 28 Days Later is a good example.
I remember that as looking phenomenal, and then I realized I was confusing it with 28 Weeks Later, which I also love, like the look of it. But then when I went back to watch 28 Days Later, I was like, why does this look like it's filmed on a Handycam from the 90s?
Because I think that was what they were kind of going for.
But it's like, it's for such a great film, I'm surprised it hasn't got as much love as other films for restoration. I mean, especially, it's Danny Boyle. I mean, he's basically in this country like a god level filmmaker. Like, he can't do any wrong for films for English people. So why wouldn't they go back and do that? But I suppose it's the same as like James Cameron not releasing like True Lies or The Abyss on 4K. He will do someday, but I think the most frustrating one is Peter Jackson has been working on remastering Brain Dead, Meet the Feebles, and bad taste in 4K for years. And
Mhm.
I have even approached Wingnut to try and do novelizations of those, but never had a reply.
But he's too busy with the Rings of Power that no one wanted.
What the fuck? Yeah, I
No
don't get
one no one wanted The Hobbit. I just wanna point that out. No one wanted that the way we got it.
Well,
Like,
nobody wanted The Hobbit as somebody looking. Bear in mind that Lord of the Rings films were so like love. They were love letters to the books. Hobbit,
uh-huh.
it was like, let's just make shit up. And I could make this in one film, and even that would be padded out. But let's make it in 3 long films, and then do weird like 60 frames a second, and really freak people out with how it looked.
Oh, yeah, or, we'll cut characters out of the theatrical version because their deaths are so bad. There's a whole scene where in the second one, in the extended version, where Gandalf wrestles a dwarf, and it's Thorin's father, and he's
Yeah.
just been held by the Witch King, and then he gets sucked into the Eye of Sauron, and they just put the Wilhelm scream in.
Oh, of
For
course.
for a main character, they put the Wilhelm scream in, which they had already used in the movie, which that should be a law. You can only if you're gonna use stock sounds, you can only use like that sound once.
But who's the person that owns the copyright for that screen? Because they must be absolutely like the most wealthy people on the planet.
Oh, I don't know.
It's probably copyright free now, but
Mhm.
imagine being the guy who actually did that. Imagine if he could be alive today and then is like going, every film and TV series has my scream. And he's probably there going, it wasn't even a good scream. I could have done it so better.
Well, I mean, it was I think it was from, like, early sound films
Yeah.
too. Like, it might be from the '30s.
It's the guy definitely is not alive.
No,
Un-
no, no, no.
Unless he's immortal, which, he could be
You know.
there.
So, I like to end a lot of, like, my shows with what we're reading.
hmm
So, what are you reading right now or listening to on audiobook or what all?
I'm actually going back over King
Okay.
because I started I because I read so many books over lockdown for doing audiobooks, for research, for just my own enjoyment. I kind of burnt out a bit on books
Yeah, that's
because I
understandable.
was so focused for like so long on just new books, new books, new books, and like just reading so much. I mean, probably read over like probably a couple of hundred books in the time, and it was just like this is just I need something that's different. And I started going back to James Herbert, as I said, like mentioned earlier. He's one of my favorites, like things like the Magic Cottage, like Fluke, Moon, the Rats trilogy. They're very English, very of their time, but they were my childhood. So I've been
Okay.
going back over kind of the books I love and the books I loved as a kid to try and basically just get myself back into it. So it is literally going over Salem's Lot again,
Yeah.
like for the billionth time. Going over that again. I mean, I obviously every book because I typeset all the Encyclopocalypse books. I read them as I'm typesetting. So every new book that comes out, I've read. So Deeper Than Hell by Josh Milliken, fantastic book. Just had to
Mhm.
read that because I was typesetting it. I've got a few new. There's a few new ones coming out because the Silver Shamrock, that whole fuck up with their incredibly racist book and all the poor authors that were left without a publisher. Encyclopocalypse picked up a lot of those
Oh,
people,
good.
and we're basically going through re-releasing, doing new artwork because as a standard, I refuse to have anything to do with whoever's fault the whole Silver Shamrock debacle was.
So, I
But
don't know what this is, so
right,
I am out of the loop here.
it was a big fuck up on their part. Whoever, I don't know whose fault it was. I think it was the owner's fault. I don't know. But basically, there's this book that was coming out by an old writer called The White Plague Chronicles,
Mhm.
and it had a cover with a black guy on it and a biohazard symbol, and it's called The
Oh,
White Plague Chronicles. I'll say that again. If that wasn't horrendously racist enough, like nobody's read the book, so we can't judge the author for anything of this. This isn't about the author. The synopsis for the book was one of the most white supremacists things I've read in a while. You can find it all online. They've still got the press release out there. It's just horrendously badly written, to the point where people, like authors, saw it and were turning around and just saying, I can't deal with this company anymore. And I think that a few of the designers involved have said, look, it wasn't anything to do with them. They aren't behind the synopsis. I have a problem with the whole thing, including the artwork and everything. But when Mark started picking up the people with the help of a guy called Sean DeRega, I don't if that's how you pronounce it.
Who I talk to.
Oh, right, yes, because he does a lot with Encyclopocalypse now. I think that's how you pronounce his surname. And if you're watching Sean, I don't really know, so I just say DeRega. Let's say that. But yeah, so they've been in, like, basically Sean's been intrinsic to facilitating a lot of the people, because obviously Silver Shamrock, as soon as that came out, there was a big furore. Everyone was like, what the fuck is going on? The owner said nothing apart from cancel the entire company. I mean, there's been a lot of problems with Silver Shamrock over the years as a publishing house because of certain things they've said and certain things they've done. But this one was such a big thing that they had a lot of writers, fantastic writers, who were just left in the cold. So they picked a load up. So I'm getting to typeset books they might only be a couple of years old because they might be new novelists, but they're ones that it feels good being able to do something for a new writer, as I am still a new writer, to give new life to their book, to try and get it out there. Like, so I'm slowly, from burning out after reading hundreds of books, getting back into it slowly, because when you typeset a book, it's a slow process. You do it slower than you read. So
you have to, yeah.
I'm sort of taking care over it and getting to, like, find the love of books again. And they're authors I've never heard of before, because even though I'm a horror author, I know fuck all about the indie horror community. Like, I'm quite new to it because I've been dealing with established older authors. So people like sort of a John Shirley and sort of a Gary Brandner, things like that. The people are like the old guard of the horror community. So I didn't know a lot of these people, and to the point where I'm somebody saying, "Oh, I've got a blurb by this person," and I'm going, "Never heard of them," and he's going, "Yeah, they're very, very famous." Like, okay, so I'm kind of educating myself on the new authors out there, to the point where I'm editing an anthology now with Janine Pipe called Legends and Lore, which is basically Encyclopocalypse's first anthology that we've got writers that we're trying to make as diverse as possible and have as many different voices out there as possible in one thing, but telling stories of mythological monsters, whether they're ones that are actually real, as in like real myths that we've got, or new myths that they've got. And this goes back to that encyclopedia of things that never were, because that's where the kind of idea came from. And like, we've got some awesome authors that like involved, and it's because of the work with that. And like, I'm getting the short stories in, and I'm editing them, and I'm reading those novels, and I can't wait for people to see those. So what we're doing with that. So yeah, when you say like, what am I reading? I'm going back to, I'm still worming way back in, but I'm focusing mainly on Stephen King and new authors I've never heard of.
There we go.
Long answer.
Oh no, it's fine. I had a question in there, so you're good. God, I can't believe that they would try to publish something like that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's a misstep. It's the one thing that people are guilty of all the time, and that's being ignorant to their own ignorance and not seeing that. Like, they'll go, "Well, this isn't racist or problematic," but having no basis for that assumption. But it was badly handled by them. Whoever wrote it, whatever. Whoever designed the cover, whatever. But I'm making a concerted effort to use nothing, absolutely nothing, of anything of Silver Shamrock have done. So we're getting all these books in. We're getting all the original files, all the original covers, everything. And I literally could just slap on Encyclopocalypse logo and release that and do the same covers and everything. But I think the authors deserve more.
Mm-hmm.
Deserve something that isn't tarnished. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter if the whole Silver Shamrock thing was just poorly thought out and not actually a bad thing, and they just didn't think about it, and it's just a mistake that was very, very bad, very bad.
Yeah.
It's best to just clean slate, and it gives me stuff to do. It gives me stuff to read and stuff to like stuff that I wouldn't normally pick up. So in between, like, me reading my comfort books, I have to read these for work, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's fun. And so far, I haven't read a bad book.
That's good.
Like, I'm waiting. I've been doing work with Mark for Encyclopedia Apocalypse now for probably 3 years, 4 years have we been going? I can't remember. And I haven't read a bad book yet. Even Taking Shape, which I told you, I hate Halloween, the films, apart from 3. I hate them. But those books are fantastic because you get to hear an author's love of whether it's that's the thing about writing that's amazing. Like if they're a good writer, when you read it, you feel the love that they have for their story. And I imagine, I haven't read a bad book yet from them, but I imagine that when you get one, it'll just seem like they're bored and just running through it, or doing a Fleming, as it will be called.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Fleming. Ian Fleming. Oh, man. So anyway, can we talk about any projects you're working on, or is that super hush? Like,
there's a lot of hush stuff because my work as a graphic designer involves, like, when it's got anything to do with like film or anything like that, is all NDA and can't talk about that. I did tell you about one thing before we started, but I can't mention it here.
yes.
As I said, the anthology Legends and Lore Volume 1, we're dealing with that. That hopefully should be out by Christmas.
Okay.
I am writing, like, before the next Animus book, I'm toying with the idea of writing a short story collection. Only because I've got a short story out there, Ian the Night Before Christmas, which was it was a free gift for everyone at Christmas, basically, last Christmas. I just wrote a short story and released it for free on ebook through Encyclopedia Apocalypse. I think now, because you can't make it free forever, it's like 99 cents or something like that. But yeah, so because I wrote that and put it out there, just as thanks for everyone for buying my books, here's a free thing. I was thinking I might just, if I've got time to write short story stuff, I might as well throw it in a collection. And that would be, I came up with a title for it, and I was very happy with it. And it was called Hellbound and Damned. And that's my that's my title for it. And that's sticking with it. I've got a list of short story ideas. But knowing me, I'll get halfway through it and then go, actually, I figured out the next Animus book. I'm writing that instead, and then I'll write that instead. Or one of the short stories, I'll be writing that and go, wait, no, this is Animus. I've got to ditch everything else and just expand that. But the Ian the Night Before Christmas, the main guy, guy E, the sheriff in it, it's an Animus story as well, but completely unrelated to the events of any book I'll ever write. It's just completely separate. But he is going to be the other main character in the next Animus book. He's basically Gobalt and E are my characters. They're the characters who are going to not necessarily drive, they'll witness everything in some respect. But yeah, so that's if you haven't read that, Jeremy, you can read it. It's short, not long enough to review, don't worry. But it might be fun.
Okay, yeah, I'm always for it.
Amongst all the thousands of other things you review and read. And how many podcasts are you talking on? Like, how many?
Geez, so the podcasts are kind of in a stasis right now, because y'all at Encyclopocalypse treat me really well. I'm serious. Like, I've never had this from a publisher where I was expecting that I was going to have to review. They sent me 3 of your stories as like a trial period. And it seems like y'all liked my Everyday Monsters review so much that I got sent, I think I got 8 more stuff.
That's short.
Including audiobooks. Because I'm working through Killer Flies right now.
Awesome.
Which I'm really, really having fun with that one.
It's so dumb 80s, it's genius. It's
but it's got like a 50s B movie thing and a little bit of a grindhouse thing in it, and I'm very for that.
It's great. I
Okay.
mean, books like that were great because that was one that Sean actually got together.
Mhm.
And to the point where I was like sent the paperback of it and had to, because there aren't a lot of these books, the writers don't have digital files.
Mhm.
They don't even have a typed manuscript anymore, because when they
Yeah.
finish the typed manuscript, they send it to the publisher and they deal with everything. So a lot of these books, I'm having to scan in page by page and convert to actual books. And it's a long process because these books have been out of print for so long. But it's great that Killer Flies is out there. And I've got to say a thank you to Sean, by the way, because I had no idea he was sending anything I wrote out. No idea. It was when I only found about your review. Didn't even know anyone was reviewing. I did a Google on myself,
Oh, really?
and it's literally one of the first and only times I've done it, because I was trying to see if my portfolio comes up if people search my name. But what I found out is that I have a stupid name, because apart from the fact, if you have the word Christian in your name, 1,000 religious things. There's
Mhm.
also Francis, Pope Francis. So I couldn't find it. But when I clicked on videos, you do SEO very well. Whatever you do as keywords must work, because it popped up. I was like, what the fuck? And then it was only 6 hours after you posted it. I was like, okay. And I was like, I did the whole thing, like, because me and reviews don't go hand in hand normally, because the people that do review anything I've done are either people who have read the novelizations and hate them because I've done something that isn't in the book, or love them but don't really. There aren't that many of people who read novelizations enough to do lots of reviews. Very few that actually read my original stuff. So when I saw that, it was just the whole dread thing of, oh god, I'm pressing play. Oh, I'm pressing play. Oh, okay. I feel guilty for feeling good about it. I feel guilty. I mean, I've got to thank you for all the kind things you've said about
Oh,
my writing. It's just as I said when I thanked you for the Anton Stacy review. Like, I don't actually mind if people even despise my books 100% and hate everything, because if they've taken the time to read them and what they say is actually not just don't like it, if it's actually a constructive thing, or like I don't like this because or something, I have got as much respect for that as anything else. And I'm just glad that people are taking the time to read something new that isn't like me reading old stuff that's
yeah.
it's comfort stuff.
I like the character stuff, but I mean, like, when Animus 3 comes out,
Oh,
what was
that'll let you down.
well, it might tie in. I was just at the time was just curious because I read it and then I listened to the audiobook
Oh, right. Okay.
because sometimes I do that where I'll read something and be like, I don't know if I have a concise thought on this.
You did. No, it's completely, no, everything you said was
Mhm.
like 100% justified. And as I said, because there's I think Horror DNA reviewed it and gave it a glowing review.
Mhm.
Also, I've got another review that is basically like, what is this shit? Like, it makes
Mhm.
no sense. I don't like it. Like, fair enough. But the fact that anyone is taking their time to read something I've done still baffles me.
Mhm.
Like, I can understand them reading the novelizations because there's a lot of film fans out there and a lot of love for the actual book, the actual films themselves. Like, I knew a lot of people would read Wishmaster,
Yeah.
and I knew very few people would read Titanfine because not many people know the film. I knew a
Well,
lot
it's
of
not even
people,
called that here.
yeah, which the problem is the script is called that. So we have to call it that.
Mhm.
But we might be releasing it as Creature at some point, because why not? We did have like one of the audiobooks and books we've got was The Visitor by Chauncey Parker, which turned into Of Unknown Origin, the film with about the killer rat. But we
Oh,
released it as The Visitor. No one knew what it was. So it's been changed on it to Of Unknown Origin, just because everyone, the film fans will know that film, and people are starting to buy it because they know what it is now. So I knew people would review those, and I didn't have a problem. But I never thought anyone would ever take the time to read one of mine, because I don't know if that's just a problem with me. But I thought,
oh
why
no,
the
I think most people think that. Like,
hmm.
it shocked me that the author who watched my review, that was terrifying because I've there's a few authors that I'm pretty sure I'm on their shit list.
uh,
Um,
trust. You can't. You couldn't. If you do reviews that are thought out and genuine, whether you even if you despise the book, you're going to say why, and that is
Yeah,
more important. Like, because it's your opinion. It's like it's actually well thought out. That's unless your early reviews are this book sucks, fuck it all, then I can see you being on a shit list.
I did once refer to a book as a litter box full of tampons, but like,
That's descriptive.
um, which quality autism, my dear friend Noah decided to just make a like YouTube poop basic video basically of that. But
Nice.
yeah, no, I try, especially now. I've been reviewing things for a long time, and I try to be more professional about it because I'm an adult now. I've been doing YouTube basically since I was like 15.
Really?
Yeah, I just wasn't all on stupid chainsaw productions. My
Yeah.
first channel got a couple flags and things for being an asshole. So I had to make another.
Well, it
But
means
that's
you're
part of growing
doing
up.
something right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I got so many. So to answer your question about my podcasts, I have Paper Movies starts up. I think we're getting an announcement video this afternoon.
Okay.
My time, it'll probably be this evening for you. That's a different channel that Adam from Bryant VRM and Matthew the Geeks Addict. It's sort of a conjoined effort, whereas the other ones are just that's my they're my babies basically. So that's seasonal. We're starting that back up. I think last week of the month. Then I got my Dune podcast, which I need to finish Dune Messiah.
You have a podcast just dedicated to June.
Yeah, it has one episode, the Dune novels, and then I think we might talk about the films. Noah Quality Autism does a lot of them with me because I can convince him because he's a speed reader.
Oh,
He can
okay.
read things really fast and retain the knowledge. So then we have King of Our Nightmares, which is our Stephen King podcast, which we need to read Night Shift next. Which I need to sandwich that in because at least with Dune Messiah, there's an audiobook I can listen to that's really good. The Dune books, they almost get as Star Wars is the gold standard of all audiobooks because they put the music in and they
Yeah.
put blaster sounds and lightsabers. It's an event. It's like pretty much always been an event. Dune, like Hans Zimmer did score for the audiobook that's different from the film.
That's kind of awesome.
And then like some of it's like an audio drama. They get like multiple people talking like
Oh, we love that. That they are always great to do.
yeah.
I've done one for that. The Encyclopocalypse did the audio book for Hellraiser: The Toll.
Oh,
I'm Pinhead in it.
oh, there you go.
Yeah, and we got. I think it's got a good, a nice little cast in there. But no, they're like, I love those the audio when they take an audio book and actually make it something else is fantastic, and I absolutely love it.
I because people always are like, oh, audio dramas are so dated. Like,
Well,
but growing up, I also used to listen to Bernard Mace's Lord of the Rings,
yeah,
which is real fun and stuff. And like they also did one for The Hobbit, but like recently, like Audible's done a ton with like the Alien franchise.
yeah. I haven't actually heard any of those, but I'm kind of intrigued and might have to dip my toe into it.
Well, some of the Alien books, I will say, if you watch my channel, the new Alien books are kind of a pain in the ass to read.
Oh, why?
They're just bad.
Oh,
Like they did a trilogy called the Shadows trilogy, and it's literally to retcon in these books happening between Alien and Aliens, like putting Ripley in where it doesn't make sense. Like Ripley's in an adventure with xenomorphs between Alien and Aliens.
she's
Like that
in
doesn't make any
space.
sense.
He's drifting through space. How is that possible?
So she like gets out and has an adventure. But I will say the audio drama, Rutger Hauer plays a character in it and is incredible. The best one though is they've adapted William Gibson's script for Alien 3, which
with the wooden planet. Is it that one?
no, this is the one that involves the Soviet Union in space. That's the thing. I think that they're the Union of Progressive Peoples, but it's the Soviet Union.
Yes.
It was written right after Aliens and then got shelved. They adapted it. Dark Horse did a mini, like a 6-issue mini series of it, which is really good. And they adapted to an audiobook. They got Michael Biehn back, and they got Lance Henriksen.
Awesome.
Um, and it's weird. It's really weird. They just did a novelization for it like a few months ago. That's on my read list. But I'm so behind with these alien books because
There's a lot of them. I know there's the new one out
there's like 3 coming out this year.
about Vasquez.
Yeah, that's not out yet. They just did one called Colony War. Then they got another one, and then like this is not counting Marvel now has the rights and they're producing comics of it. It's wild. The alien continuity is ridiculous. I am writing my outline of how I have to attack this, but like my basic thing stands of read Steve Perry's first 3 books, which are the true sequel to Alien 3. Like, although they change Hicks and Newt's names to Wilkes and Billy, but Ripley's in them.
Why would you even bother?
20th Century Fox.
Oh, that's why, buddy. Yeah,
said, like, this doesn't make sense. And it like they followed the original comics from the 80s that Dark Horse did, but they changed names and they tried to incorporate Alien 3 in, and it doesn't make sense.
No. Like for Alien 3, I've always wanted to read the draft of with the wooden planet.
Me too.
I don't quite understand the concept, and I'm intrigued. Like, how is this? How are you on a wooden fucking planet? That doesn't make sense, and I want to know why.
And like they're all monks, and then there's like the weird sexual element that was thrown, well, which is just H.R. Giger was just being H.R. Giger.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I'm a huge Alien 3 apologist.
I think it's like the director's cut in particular is pretty good.
That's how I got into Fincher. Obviously, it was one of his first ones, but I like bravery in when they do a sequel that you just don't expect. Like it's such a shift in tone, and Alien had that. Like Cameron came in and basically flipped it on his head. And if you're going to write another one, I mean, it'd be so easy to just go, we're going to go the action route.
Yeah.
It'd be so easy. But the fact that it was like, actually, I'm going to make this weird and I'm going to have an alien dog.
It's better than Alien Resurrection.
Yeah.
Which tried to be a comedy.
I'll give Alien Resurrection one thing, is that people talked about it.
Well, Ron Perlman it acts like a maniac, and it's the best part of the movie.
And I don't care what anyone says, that alien baby, I like it. It's so stupid. I still can't believe it. It's like the film was made up to the point where you see the alien baby, and then they forget it, and they go, "Oh, we're quitting this project." And then just some students came in and went, "We'll finish it. We haven't got any money, so we're just going to make whatever." And there you go. And the fact that it's so big budget and they did that, you got to give hats off to how mental. You sort of go, I can't even criticize it because it's that mad. Like Halloween 3, so mental. They move Stonehenge.
Yeah,
that in itself is just such a level of insanity for filmmaking that you've got to give it respect. You can't criticize it. Some things are just too mad to criticize.
Yeah, it did. The Halloween, I can't stress it enough to anyone who hasn't watched the Halloween franchise as a whole. It shouldn't be a franchise. I love the first one on a technical level, and I still think it holds up in its scariness, but it only holds up as scary if there wasn't sequels.
Yeah.
And 2 was a ripoff of Friday the 13th that was a ripoff of Halloween, which is I think Roger Ebert said that. Like,
but I kind of wish they stayed with the Halloween 3, what they were going to do, and just do a different film without Michael Myers, just a Halloween theme. That would have been great. But then you've got the remakes, and you're there going, well, I thought with remakes you'd make them make more sense if you were going to remake them. But no, just podcasters managing to find a mask that a serial killer wears and taking it to the serial killer. Like, that's like, how would you get that?
Yeah.
How would you get? I mean, it was the one thing that you're supposed to, like, when you read books and watch films, you're supposed to just lose all concepts of logic, but there's certain things in certain parts of, especially films, that I can't leave. Like, I'm still stuck on the podcasters with the mask. Like, no matter what happens after that film, I'll never forget it, and I'll be there the whole time going, nah.
That makes more sense than Halloween Kills.
Yeah, yeah,
That,
but,
but hey, evil dies tonight.
no, it doesn't.
But they killed the one character you care about.
Yeah. Oh, it's a thing. It's a thing. I like, because I would have had a lot more respect. So I remember growing up when I was watching Halloween, I loved number 4. I loved number 4 as a kid. Like, that was, for some reason, that was the one that I really loved.
Yeah.
And then when I watched I watched the others and just dismissed them. You know, you sit there and go, okay, Paul Rudd, you needed your start in life. There you go. Not a good film, but there you go. But then when the new ones came out, I actually fell for it and thought, these are gonna be great. Completely forgetting I don't like Halloween films. How did they aim that marketing at me that I went, ooh? I should have sat there and went, don't care. But no, I watched it. And to be fair, they made me like the franchise less. Because when I think about it, I still actually I like number 1, I like number 3, I like number 4. Like, there's parts of, like, even the Curse of Michael Myers that I sit there and go, it's not good, but it's not
a head
terrible.
explosion.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good bits in it. But for some reason, the new ones have completely skewed my mind to go, no. Oh, no. But I say that, the new one's going to come out. Halloween Kills again, or whatever the fuck it's going to be called.
Halloween ends, but it won't end.
No, and I'm going to watch it just the same as I've done all the others, going, oh, this is going to be great. And then it'll end, and I'll go, oh, all right.
I will say this: the Rob Zombie ones, I think, are just it's an excuse to have every character be a horrible redneck.
Yeah, I actually had a lot of respect for the first one, Rob Zombie's one. I didn't necessarily like it as a film.
No,
but so much respect because he changed what it was and tried to make it something different instead of just doing what is being done now and literally just rehashing it, but badly. This one said, I'm going to literally change it. And Rob Zombie, I love Devil's Rejects, and I loved even House of a Thousand Corpses. All right, his latest one's fine. Lords of Salem, I don't understand.
I've never seen it. That's the one I have not watched. I thought 3 from Hell was like a bad version of Devil's Rejects.
I don't get, like, 3 from Hell. Like, it was like, I'm returning to these characters. Like, great. How did you do this badly? You've literally done, like, I thought Devil's Rejects was one of the most, I think, of its time, perfect horror films of an homage to an old, a bygone era. I adored it at the time. Obviously, looking at it now, you're sitting there going, oh, this is...
Well, it's very post 9/11 cinema.
Yeah.
It's so unpleasant, but that's the point.
It's like that, and I always think of Hills Have Eyes, the remake, in the same breath. And I love the Hills Have Eyes remake, mainly because I thought the original film was a bit shit. But I love the remake, mainly because of how nihilistic it was. And I really liked it. And then, but obviously, these are the kind of films that I don't necessarily want to watch now. But at the time, I really liked them. But with Rob Zombie, I was like, with Halloween, I was like, I get what you've done. I get why you've done this. And I actually really respect what you've done, even if I don't personally enjoy it. Then I watched Halloween 2, and then I went, I take all of that back. What the fuck is that white horse?
Until Halloween Kills, I thought Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 was the worst sequel. Halloween Kills has no identity.
But I have read a lot of reviewers saying now that Halloween 2 is actually amazing and people need to revisit it because of how good it is. I just don't believe them.
No, I don't take any credit in that. That's like when people, like when Last Jedi came out and they're like, you should rewatch The Phantom Menace. And I'm like, I'll reread The Phantom Menace because that's a good novelization. Because it's not George Lucas's dialogue. That's the thing with the Star Wars prequel novels. They get rid of most of George Lucas's dialogue and they write dialogue that like feels like humans are like saying it.
Well, so I loved Splinter in the Mind's Eye. That was one of the first. That was actually the first Star Wars book I read, and I fucking adored that. I have a lot of problems with all. I fell for The Force Awakens when it came out. I fell for it. I was a fanboy with it. I don't I know it was manipulative, and I know I was supposed to love it, and there was no way that I couldn't. Then they ruined it with the next two.
I was so drunk when I saw Force Awakens that I didn't remember a lot of it, and I had to be told what happened. We were at a bar, and my cousin's like, "I got you Star Wars tickets. You want to go?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I don't remember how we got there. It was across town that I watched it. No, I will say this: Alan Dean Foster's novelization for Force Awakens
Is he?
explains that Star Killer base that makes no sense. He actually like talked to like a physicist, about black holes with like scientists and
Yeah.
stuff because he read the script and he's like, that doesn't make sense.
I've got to say, he is my what I aspire to be as a novelizer. Is that a word? I don't know. We're going with it, but that is who I aspire to be. That is he has
He's the
made
king.
an art of it, and he is the best. I think he is the best novelizer out there, and because he's the only one I've read that can change his voice between books.
Yes.
Most of them can't, and to be fair, I don't think I can, but I try. But he does, and I was Pete Atkins referred to me as the new Alan Dean Foster once, and I could have kissed him for that. Right? What a lovely man to say that. I don't know. I hope he didn't mean it as an insult. He might hate Alan Dean Foster. I don't know, but I took it as a very big compliment. And haven't read that. Now I might actually read his Force Awakens one.
It's worth it. It's short. The only thing I have a problem. So he wrote a bunch of Finn and Rey like love dialogue, and they cut it.
Yeah,
and he had there's a really good interview on YouTube because he was really mad at Disney because they weren't paying him royalties. I think that was last year that was going on, like because they also own 20th Century Fox. He was not getting any royalties for any of the Alien books he wrote, and he wrote most of the novelizations for that franchise.
Yeah. It's unfortunately, as I said, that's going to be the case for me as well. And when the contract with the Encyclopocalypse lapses, if any of the rights holders want to go and sell it to Penguin and then they release it worldwide and it becomes a #1 hit, I won't get a cent. Which is, to be fair, Alan Dean Foster probably contractually isn't owed a penny.
Oh, he is though.
But that's the thing. But his contract states he was. Mine say I'm not. But his.
Oh, that's yeah.
It's one of the things. Most of the things. It's one of the things that happens when you deal with film. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I think he's lucky that his contracts do say that. I don't think all of them will say that because they're wanting to keep the rights as much as possible.
Yeah, it's just the contracts are just so peculiar when you get into the novelization territory, and like when these things like lapse into like obscurity. Like that's something with paper movies we're realizing we're so thankful for like Encyclopocalypse for like getting things like Reanimator and Fright Night. Like you wouldn't see these, like the original prints are thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still stuff like Escape from New York is a book I've been after for a while, and it's like $1,000.
I have I've been in contact with John Carpenter's people, trying to get that out for reprint. It's just a lot of the time these filmmakers, when they make them, they think they're in the rights, but then when they if they can't find the original contracts, which you think everyone would have their contracts, but it's life, and for something that's 40 years old, keeping a piece of paper that isn't digitized might be problematic, and they might own the rights, but they can't prove they own the rights, and you can't contact the film studio because they're not going to look in their archives for a contract to prove that someone else owns it, so they'll just out blanket say, no, you can't publish it, we own it, without even checking if they do own it, and unless the filmmaker has that contract, nothing they can do, which is awful, because I've been going around trying to find like new novelizations, not just for me, but for other writers. Like we've tried to get, we have managed to get Long Weekend and Storm Warning, the Australian horror films by Jamie Blanks, the director who made Valentine. He, an urban legend, he was being so helpful and managed to get us in contact with the rights holders of the estate of the screenwriter who wrote both of the films. and we managed to secure the rights, and I've managed to set up an Australian author to write those books. But that was like, that's an amazing thing. Like you sit there and go, oh, thanks. It's fallen into place perfectly. Most of it is shouting into the wind. Like I can send 100 emails to people and they won't even reply. Like most people don't reply. I mean, the other one I'm trying at the moment to get is House, the 1986 Sean Cunningham produced one.
Yeah.
Which is that was one of my films growing up as a kid. I adored it. I tried my best to contact Stephen King because I really want to novelize Sleepwalkers.
Oh, yeah.
But not only that, I want to do a novelization of Maximum Overdrive. Yes, I know Trucks exists, but it's not Maximum Overdrive.
No, it's not. It's barely a story.
So I mean, thing is, King is one of those people that is so public yet so private.
Yes.
Getting a message to him or to his people is difficult. And if you do get someone through to his people, it's likely never going to actually get considered, because obviously he's one of the most famous authors in the world ever. And somebody coming going, I want to write a novelization for a film you once wrote that you probably hate. Because I think he does hate Sleepwalkers. So
I've never heard either. I know he's famous. Like he hates Kubrick's The Shining.
Yeah, which, to be fair, I have the problem with The Shining for the same reason.
Me too. We talked about it, but I always get shit on for that.
The thing is, I love the miniseries because for the first time, I mean, yes, it is dated, and it does not hold up to reviewings now. But the fact that it's actually got the topiary maze, like the actual that, and the fact it's a croquet mallet. Come on, no, these are to me they were integral parts to the plot that were changed at the last minute for no good reason. But I'll give Kubrick his due. Looks absolutely beautiful. It's spectacularly. It is
well scored,
and it's a great film. It's just not The Shining.
Yeah, no. Kubrick was notorious for that, where he just takes something and I think the only time that it worked well was a Clockwork Orange.
Yeah,
the end of Clockwork Orange's novel, he's like all well again.
Yeah,
a happy ending, and it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, that's another film, nihilistic film that you can enjoy once and then go, I ain't ever watching that again. It's like the time when I watched a Serbian film and I got to the end and went, that was extremely powerful. I am so disturbed. Oh my God. The filmmaker is a genius and twisted at the same time, and I will never, ever watch it ever again. Like it's those things that I enjoy those kind of things for the moment, but I want to have too much of a happy outlook to revisit sad things.
Yeah, I did my human misery. I think every college student goes through their human misery phase when you're like, oh God, being an adult sucks. Yeah. Especially when you're like a film student, like I was. Like, no student film is happy.
No, and the films they get you to look at as well, they're not happy. It's always, let's watch these art house films that you're not going to understand. That if you have to watch a film and somebody's telling you what it means, then the film's not doing its job, or you're the wrong audience, or they just show you these morose films. I mean, I get that films like Once Upon a Time in America is a classic. I understand that. Doesn't mean I enjoy it or I want to sit through all of it. I mean, it's like when I was doing the creative writing MA, we had to one of our modules was about film, and oh my God, like this, I don't want to watch The Bounty. I don't want to watch it. There's nothing you can do to make me watch it. Oh, now I have to sit through it. I've never watched it until now. Now I've got to watch it. And just things like that, like Company of Wolves. Like, I know it's got some great scenes in it, but I'd stop it. Just show me joy. Show me joy. Like, I would love to go on a filmmaking course or a writing course where it literally focuses on making something that makes you happy, whether it's horror, whether it's like extreme, like horrible violence and something, doesn't matter. Just create joy. Whereas I found every part of education is, let's depress you until you remember this and then repeat it and we'll give you a grade.
Yeah. I mean, I made two of the worst student films ever in that time period. Like, I think I joked about it. I just reviewed sausages and I made fun of my films.
Are you going to release them?
They're on YouTube. You can watch them.
Oh, okay. Well, I will do after this.
Oh God, you're gonna think, wow, what a piece of shit.
Oh,
There
I
was
mean,
one where like I had a teacher who literally sabotaged me every step of the way. We our group was too small and we couldn't have an audio guy,
mm,
so we had to make a silent film.
that's
And
great.
and it took me doing voiceover over the top of, well, we didn't shoot it like a silent film.
Mm,
So it wasn't like the old-timey, like they're the big gestures and stuff. None of that. It was shot like we were going to have ADR it back in, and she told us no.
that's
So,
brilliant. And it reminds I'm getting flashbacks to my own time on film, to making short films as well.
oh yeah, it's so frustrating. That's why I do this. This isn't frustrating. This is nice. Just sitting back and talking for like
I'm
2.5
glad I can
hours.
spend this time with you for my first ever video interview. I am glad.
Oh,
I'm
good.
glad I did
I'm
this.
flattered.
Very much for asking me.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. Anyway, I think that about wraps it up here.
Yeah, nearly 2.5 hours. I wonder if anyone will ever make it to the end.
Oh yeah, I have a quality autism. He'll
Yeah.
pull things from this and probably to make fun of me later.
Brilliant. Well,
I have some people
how I
that will sit through.
yeah, so I apologize for the amount I talk. I run on a bit.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I was worried it was going to be too short.
So,
anyway, everyone, have a good day.
thanks
Or
for
a good
watching.
evening for you.
Yep, nearly 6:30.
All right. Here we go.